magpa-practice na ano?
Ay, konti na lang, sir. Siguro mga 3 after 5 minutes, sir. Okay pa? Mm-hmm.
Magpa-practice.
Mm-hmm. Sir, okay na i-start ko na?
Oo.
Sige, sir. Hello, good morning. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good morning. Good morning to everyone. So, a pleasant morning to everyone. Welcome to the second and the final day of the online seminar workshop on research writing, sponsored by the Computing Society of the Philippines. We will now begin the seminar with the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Thank you very much for that. We will now hear some welcome greetings from Dr. Jaime Caro of the Computing Society of the Philippines.
Oh, yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see, uh, that you're all here to attend this meeting, this research writing workshop. Uh, this is the second day of this workshop. Unfortunately, the this is supposed to be the third day, but unfortunately, last week it was 2 weeks ago it was canceled because of the typhoon, and we're glad that we're able to continue on today. Uh, we have packed this morning with 3 speakers. We've rescheduled the talks from the canceled event to today. So today we're privileged to have 3 speakers that will be talking about different topics on research writing and research uh, doing research. And so in the afternoon, after this seminar, we have the workshop proper, where those who have submitted abstracts will be able to uh, uh, receive mentoring from our very able uh, mentors from different universities here in the country. So we hope we can continue on with events like this, and we hope that after today, this afternoon's workshop, everyone who participated would have finished writing their paper ready for publication. You are welcome to submit papers to the Philippine Computing Journal and the Philippine Information Technology Journal, uh, which are publications of the Computing Society of the Philippines. We are also inviting you, not just the workshop participants, but everyone in the audience to present papers in the Philippine Computing Science Congress, which is the annual conference of the Computing Society of the Philippines that will be happening in March 2021. It will be another another virtual conference that is being organized with Dr. Randy Gamboa, who is here today as conference chair. Okay, so uh, again, welcome to this seminar workshop on research writing. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Geoff?
Thank you very much, Dr. Caro, for that. And at this point, as was mentioned by Dr. Caro, our schedule today is jam-packed with talks. So at this point, we will proceed to our first talk. We will now ask Dr. Thomas James Tiamli to introduce our speaker.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Our first speaker for today obtained her bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degree in computer science from De La Salle University. She is currently a faculty member of De La Salle University College of Computer Studies, where she also formerly served various roles, such as the chair of the Software Technology Department, director of the Advanced Research Institute for Informatics, Networking, and Computing, and also the college dean. She was also appointed as the Vice Chancellor for Academics of De La Salle University from 2017 to 2019. Her research area is on effective human-computer interaction. She has served as the head of the Center of Empathic Human-Computer Interactions of De La Salle University and has published several books, journal articles, and conference publications. It is my honor to introduce to you our first speaker for today, Dr. Murdin Theodora Suarez.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
So I'll just share my screen. Can you see my slides? Okay ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I was asked by Geoff and Jimmy to make a presentation to everybody today, and I thank you for the invitation. I also appreciate the design of the workshop because people are really supposed to come up with an output at the end. I suppose that's really investment from the perspective of all the participants. And thank you to Thomas for the introduction. So the title of my presentation today is Research Dissemination, the Whys, the Hows, and everything in between. They wanted me to talk to you about choosing between a conference or a journal publication. I decided to put in a little bit of everything just so everybody gets to see a little bit of the terrain and, contextualize it in their own personal situations. Wait lang. I cannot move my slide. Okay. So in my research, context is key. Context is important to understand where everyone is coming from. And in this presentation, I decided to create two fictitious characters. One is Janine. Janine is an assistant professor from the University of St. James. If you ask me where the university is, it is fictitious. I got it from another one of my presentation early on in the year. So she's an assistant professor. She is currently pursuing a graduate degree, a PhD degree, and her goal is to finish, of course, her degree and apply for promotion. That's the context of our faculty member, which I suppose a lot of us here are. And then I move on to the right. So this is the University of St. James. So University of St. James is a young university. It was founded in 2010. It's a private higher ed. In 2012, it decided to offer computer science, IT, and IS, and part of its objective, of course, is to grow its faculty pool. In 2018, it received funding for faculty scholarships, and part of the objective of St. James then is to improve faculty profile. So at the present, St. James wants to improve its research productivity, that's part of its key result area. As a university, they want to increase publication and faculty performance in terms of publications. So the question is, why do we want to publish? From the perspective of the faculty and the perspective of the university, these are two different things. The first one, from the perspective of Janine, and this was shared by Dr. Richel Wayong in the first session, was first to share new knowledge. Because you are doing research, you want people to find out what you were able to do. You don't want to keep the good news to yourself. So you want to share knowledge. The next thing is you also want to receive feedback. How good is your work? Did you miss a few points? Are there other literatures that you could have added? How could it be further improved? Where do you go from where you are now? So you want to receive feedback from other experts in your area. And the third one is to be part of that community of experts you contributed your work to. You want to be able to work with others who speak the same language as you. And times are gone when somebody does individual research. No, we all work in teams. We all work, if possible, interdisciplinarily or multidisciplinarily. And so you want to be part of a community because they help you with comments. You help them out with your comments. You can work together in international projects if you have international collaborators. And the whole point really is to hasten the progress of that area to new innovations a little bit faster than if people were doing things on their own. And the last one is, and this is very practical, for job security and promotion. So we know if we want to stay in a university and we're not permanent, we will probably be asked for publications. And if you want to get promoted, nowadays typically it's going to be based on your publication and a history of that publication. Other things would also be, I forgot to add here, other things would be if you want to seek external funding, then they will take a look at your publication history to see your competence in terms of starting and, of course, completing research projects. We move on to the right. So in the context of University of St. James, why does it want its faculty members to do research? The first one really is to ensure that it has high quality staff, because high quality staff translate to good teaching and a good learning experience for students. The next one is to satisfy government regulations, because CHED now has some requirements related to publication of faculty members and research activities of the university. The third one is to attract students. We know that if we have good faculty roster, their achievements can be placed on social media and people hear about it. And so students who would like to have a more focused, maybe research-oriented bachelor's degree will probably get attracted to St. James. And of course, the competence in terms of discipline of faculty is there if you have researchers who are faculty members. And then, of course, to augment finances, we all know that it's very expensive to fund research projects. And so if you have high quality research staff who can seek external funds, pull in funds to do their own research, it's going to be a lot easier for St. James in terms of sustainability of its operations. Now, I highlighted two of Janine's post-its in yellow, that is to receive feedback and be part of the community, because I feel this is very important. Number one, it is difficult to receive negative feedback. So this is something we will need to learn to accept and deal with. I have a section on that later on. And part of it, and the next thing is to be part of a community. It is very important that we are able to have a bigger mindset and learn to work in multicultural environments, because the world really is global nowadays. And that's part, again, of our learning as an individual, to be able to come to terms with how other people do things and not say mine is the only correct way. There are other ways to do correct to do the same things maybe correctly too, and that's something that can be point of discussion. So receiving feedback and being part of a community is very, very important in terms of publishing your work. Now, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I attended a presentation of Dr. Alan Bernardo. He was talking about publications. And he said, you imagine yourself attending a dinner party. When you attend a dinner party, what do you do? So you enter the room and then you scan, right? You take a look at whom you know. Are they already here? Or don't you know anybody? That's even more scary. So you look for people you know, and then if you see somebody that you know, you probably gravitate towards that small cluster of people who are talking. Now, what do you do when you insert yourself into that small cluster of conversation? Typically, you will listen. So what are they talking about? Are they talking about the weather? Are they talking about how difficult it was to reach the restaurant? Or have they eaten? Is the wine good? You listen to the conversation. And then after you've listened and got a good grasp of what they're talking about, you share. So if they're talking about how difficult it was to visit, to go to the restaurant, then you'd probably say, it was not so difficult for me. I managed to get a grab ride early on. So you share only after you've chosen your small cluster and you've listened well to your cluster. And it is important to contextualize publication in this way because this is really a very good analogy of what happens when you publish. You scan, meaning what is everybody talking about these days, and what they're talking about is found in their publications. So people are now talking a lot about AI and deep learning and customization and personalization on the fly. So after you scan your community, that cluster, you listen to what they're saying, trying to understand what they are talking about, and thinking, do I subscribe to the same belief? Is this the methodology that I want to do? If we've already read their publications, is there a question you want to ask? Because I believe asking the right question is really far more important than answering a question. Because if we ask the right questions, the correct answer has a lot more value than just answering any other question. And so after you've asked your question, maybe you ask them that question, maybe you share your answer to your question, maybe you ask them about what their thoughts are about your question. And so this is how publication goes. And your sharing is really your submission of your article, your manuscript to the publisher or to a conference and say, this is what I have to share. Do you find value in that? The response of this small cluster to you is their opinion of what you said, and you learn from that. In the same thing, the reviews that come to you from a conference after you've submitted your work, it got accepted during the presentation, these are all comments that are meant to help you in your work. The biggest problem is having nothing to say. Years ago, many years ago, more than a decade ago, publishing and doing research is not the norm. And as a faculty member, we were asked to write. But we don't have anything to write because we don't do research. So you find yourself in a chicken and egg situation. Okay, you want me to write. I have nothing to write. And that's the scariest thing of all, having nothing to write and being forced to write. So maybe things should start with, you need to have something to write. So my premise here is everybody has their own pet projects, whether it's a big one or a small one, funded or not funded, doesn't matter. It just needs to mean that you're working on something that is scholarly. Scholarly meaning your work is founded on the scan and that you've listened. Okay? And the scans and the listening are based on reputable sources of information. Okay. So I'm a big fan of the developmental approach, which means that not everybody starts in the same place, not everyone progresses as fast as somebody else, and that there's a roadmap that can be crafted for an individual. So typically, it will be in terms of making your presentations and submitting your manuscripts. It would be to start with university level venues, for example. So in LaSalle, we have the DLSU Science and Technology Congress, and our young faculty members, even our bachelor students who already have good results, may publish, may submit their manuscripts in the university level venues. Why do you start there? Because as an environment that's really nurturing, they don't blast your ideas and kill it off just at the point where you're starting your research career. So they are more gentle with their comments. They handhold you in the entire process. So I would suggest a university level venue, for example. So they're nurturing. It helps build the conversation among different colleges in that university and so on. And then, of course, you move on to national or regional venues, as JB mentioned earlier. No, there's the PCSC, and there's I know PSITE also has its own national conferences. So these are the next venues to progress to, because then you get to talk to other universities within the country who are doing the same kind of work as you. Other thing is, do you only attend sessions which are related to yours? Of course, you attend those which are related to yours, but what if you're invited to a talk that's totally out of your area? Well, if you do attend, you may realize that a different perspective may help you look differently at the same thing that you've been doing and looking at it consistently from this perspective. So the shift in perspective may also have. So you may also want to attend other sessions that are not necessarily within your line of expertise. As, of course, from national, we move on to Asian regional, and global venues. I use the word venues here because a venue may really be a conference or a journal. We have not yet discussed choosing between conference or a journal. So you either have your Asia regional venues and then your global venues. Of course, as you move on, the sphere of influence increases. And so it becomes a little bit more difficult because the pond is getting bigger. No? So that's why it becomes challenging. And later on, I'll talk about having to assess where you are and moving on. Moving on and seeing how to move forward. Now, remember that in the developmental approach, it is important that you know your capabilities, including the complexity and quality of your work. You have to reflect after every acceptance and rejection. Now, because it is developmental, you need to assess. So if after the university venue, um, after reading your manuscript, they had little revisions, and when you did your presentation, you got good comments, then maybe it's time for you to move on to a national conference, for example. But if at the university level venue, they felt that the manuscript was unprepared, the level of maturity is not prepared, there's still no results, then probably you should try doing it again. Go to the university venue again rather than move on to the national. Now, there's some people who will gamble and go to the national. That's fine. That's really not a problem, except that you also need to be prepared with the comments that you receive from the national level conference. Okay, important to always know where you are. Rethink. Think about what you need to do next. It is important to strategize. All right, so reflect after every acceptance and rejection. Now, uh, when I was administrator, I wasn't doing too much research. Research and how we do it has really changed in the last decade. No, before they were only counting the number of publications you had, and you're good to go. Right now, you know that they're not doing that anymore. We're judged based on another metric. So here, if you have not yet registered for your ORCID ID, please do so. So you could just Google it, or ORCID, your ORCID ID. What's an ORCID ID? It's a unique identifier for a researcher. And why do you need a unique ORCID ID? It is important because it doesn't tie you to a university. Remember, for some people, they move from their PhD they take in Japan, and then they take postdoc in Australia, and then move on to a tenured position in the UK. So typically, we are tied to our email addresses when we do our publications and register in portals, and the ORCID ID helps just have a universal identifier for all of us. And so please register for to your ORCID ID. This gets matched to your Mendeley account too, and it gets matched with um, external grants. If you will submit proposals for international funding, sometimes they ask for your ORCID ID to check also. So it's important for you to have your ORCID ID. So years ago, there wasn't any need for ORCID, but because of global mobility of researchers and academic staff, people move around. There became a need, no, for ORCID. Next, we know that we have Scopus. We are encouraged to submit to Scopus publications. And so you can also have your Scopus ID, and they track your H index and your citations. You can also have your Google Scholar. No, I'm sure maybe some of you already have your Google Scholar and your Scopus. But you could do that for those of you who don't have that yet. And then, of course, there's the H index. So the H index is a measure of how good our work is. So it's not enough that you publish. It's important that people in that conversation mention you in their conversation. So that's what H index is. People cite your work. It's important that your work gets cited, otherwise people find no value in that work. Right? So that's just what the H index is for. So I will provide Dr. Joff with a list of links that I use for the presentation for your reference also. And I'll categorize it by ORCID, H index, and so on. All right. Understanding a journal's quality. This will also apply for conferences. So there's a impact factor. It's just the average number of times articles from the journal published in the last 2 years have been cited. So both the impact factor and the H index are based on citations. No, so a journal is good if the articles from that journal are cited all the time. No, it makes sense. And then H index is the same, except that they just have a different formula. And I suppose you've also heard of Beall's list. All right. So I put here the new URL. So you have high quality journals, and then you have predatory journals. So why do we have predatory journals? So, even predatory conferences also. Why do we have predatory journals? There is a mounting pressure on academic staff in the last decade to produce publications, and this is brought about by the university rankings, which is brought also about by the decline in public funds for foreign universities. So the seeming victim, and this is just me, the seeming victim of all this is the academic staff, the faculty slash researcher who wants to get tenure from a good university and is therefore required to have to churn out manuscripts like a paper factory. Uh, so it's very difficult. And so predatory journals really do not do authentic peer review. They will just get your article, and then after a week or a few days tell you, okay, this is accepted, and then you have to pay this amount for publication. I was reading about predatory conferences, and in terms of predatory conferences, somebody calls you up, like a call center agent calls you up and say, Would you be interested to attend this conference? But that's not in my line of work. And then they say, oh, it's okay, I'll give you a student discount. And then, but that's only a few weeks away. Will they still be able to accept my manuscript? That's okay, we will accept the manuscript. And could you give me your credit card number? And the registration fee is $600. So it has become a source of what? Incorrect practices. So there's a lot of fake conferences, there's a lot of predatory journals. So we have to be wary of this and be very careful. Now, how do we know if they're good enough? You take a look at the editorial board, you take a look at the organizers, who are the people behind it, if it's organized by a professional organization, is it legitimate? And of course, have you encountered these conferences or journals when you were doing your lit review? Because really, the lit review plays a very important role in identifying where to publish. Okay, so now I will show you. I will show you something. So there's a what we call Saimago journal and country rank. Can you see my screen? Still see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Suppose. Okay. Sige. So we have the journal rankings. So the journal rankings tell you the top journals in the world. So in this case, lumped all together, it's CA, Cancer Journal for Clinicians. It's a Q1 journal. We have Q1, Q2 until Q4 for the quartiles. Let's go to subject areas. Let's go to computer science. Subject categories, let's do AI because everybody is going gaga over AI. So the top journal is IEEE Transactions on Pattern Analysis and Machine Intelligence, followed by Science Robotics. These are from the US. All right, the publishers from the US. The third is France, and so on. So moving down, you just see that. So let's do.
Excuse me, ma'am. We still see the
Yes.
slides. I think you have to
You
share
still
the
see the
screen.
slides. Ay, sorry. Sandali. New share. This one. Ayan. Can you see it? Okay na?
Hindi pa po. Ayan, okay na po.
So, ayan.
Okay na po.
Okay,
Okay na.
thank you. So here we have the top journals for computer science in the world. All right. So you have the US, France, the UK, and so on. And then wait lang, 3 years. Okay. Let's do it by region. So if it's, let's have country rankings pala. Country rankings, so you see the top is the US, followed by China, and that's a really big disparity between US and China in terms of citations and each index. Let's go to subject areas. You're still seeing it naman, ano? Hindi ako nawawala. Okay. You have computer science, you have AI, country rankings. So the documents, China has more documents and the US trails behind. The US has a higher citation score with an H index of 501. But this is from 1996 to 2019. Let's change that and make it from 2015 to 2019. Let's make it 2019. If you make it 2019, then the story is different, no? Wait. Okay. Ayan. So, it's still US, but the citable documents, China is already moving ahead. No? So in terms of citations per document, China is 0.54 and US is 0.49. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that China has produced more papers on AI than the US. It has produced more citations per document than the US. So something that we have to be careful about. So that means I've been talking for 25 minutes. Let's look at Asia. Let's see where the Philippines is. So the Philippines is at the 13th. All right. Thailand is ahead. But surprisingly, Bangladesh is higher than the Philippines. Okay, so something for us to think about. When we do research, are we able to impact nation building as well? No, I suppose that's something that we would like to think about, because if it is for nation building, then we have to be able to do it well. And I suppose it's another big motivation for Janine and for University of St. James to do well with their research activities, because it really has an impact on our economy. Okay. A few, no, that was yesterday. If you see that news that Dyson, the maker of the high-end vacuum cleaners, have decided to outsource to the Philippines IoT and software development jobs for their products. So that's because they see the value in the technical capacity of our graduates and our universities. No? So I think that's something that we have to continue to work on. Okay. Are you able now to see my slides?
Yes.
Thomas? Okay, thank you. All right, so I move on. So this is now the comparison between a conference and a journal. So both are venues for dissemination. On the left, it is a venue for researchers to disseminate findings face-to-face, interact, network, and be part of a community. The length of the paper and the review process is different. Limited number of pages and acceptance is released all at the same time for everybody. For a journal, it's a venue for scholars to disseminate usually mature findings, which means natapos na yung project, and submit manuscripts reviewed by peers. It is not so strict about the number of pages or the manuscript length. And there's an iterative process until the manuscript becomes ready for publication. Regarding the depth of work, typically a conference will have the newest results. It need not be the full results of a large project. If you find something significant, maybe you could already put it out. In terms of a journal, it's typically mature work, a complete results of a multi-year project, or something that is already could already present significant findings and sometimes novel findings. In terms of cost, of course, there's travel fees now and registration for a conference, for journals. Sometimes they will ask for publication fees, no, for some, but it's not all. It's typically for open access publications. And then for modality, of course, conference is face to face, but now it's become virtual because of COVID. And modality is not applicable to journal. You just submit and then you interact via the iterations on the manuscript. Access only via registration and sometimes via proceedings after the conference is finished. And access to the journal is via subscription or open access if applicable. Now, what do you do now? You have something to write. You know what a journal or a conference is. You know that you have to be careful in choosing. You know that you can apply a developmental approach. If there are administrators in this call, please help your young researchers with their teaching load. Please give them time to do research. Okay, what do you do now? You self-check. All right, I place some reflection points. Do I publish in a paper or a journal? The first question is, where are you at? Are you at the proposal stage? Are you doing analysis on preliminary results? Are you already writing your final results? If you're at the proposal stage, so typically this is an idea, so maybe you present it in paper. If you're talking about the design of some system that you want to present, then maybe that can be a poster in a conference. Or if you get lucky, if there's significant uniqueness in your work, maybe it becomes a conference paper. Sometimes people at the proposal stage write systematic literature review. So if it's an SLR paper, it can be submitted to a journal. It's like the first step towards your dissertation. You could submit it to a journal. The next is to identify what material do you have. Are you undertaking basic research, applied research, interdisciplinary research? Because journals and conferences have certain leanings. So you have to identify, is this the right venue for me? Is this work accepting applied research projects? I am working on applied project. Does it match? Sometimes if you get to the wrong journal, they will not evaluate it even if you submit a manuscript. They will say, we've looked for reviewers, but they do not want to review it because this is not part of the thrust of the journal. So you need to move on to another publication venue. It's not a rejection, but they're saying it's misaligned. It's not a good fit. All right, next, the third one, how does it compare in terms of, this is supposed to be scope, in terms of the scope, magnitude, and findings. So sometimes it has to do with the number of respondents to a survey, or it has to do with the amount of work you put in on top of previous work. All right, so what's the magnitude, the scope of your work, and the findings that you were able to uncover. All right, so are you able to improve the performance of an algorithm by a certain percentage? Are you able to improve the performance by cutting down on memory usage? Is it a new model? Is it a new architecture? So you have to identify your work in relation to everybody else's. And then, what are your findings? Typically, we will measure accuracy, performance, utility, and impact, of our work. So if we did software to evaluate the facial expressions of somebody who is attending a Zoom conference, is that a sign of anxiety? Is that a sign of tiredness? If you analyze the eyes, do you see some level of tiredness from the eyes? How good does it perform based on chance? And how good does it perform versus all others in your literature? All right, so if you have good findings and unique contribution, then it can be for a journal. Otherwise, if it's a small part, small segment of that project, you did your first experiment, nothing so conclusive, but some hopeful indicators of success, then that can be for a paper. Next, what are your goals? And this is me being practical. For some people, they need a journal for promotion, so they need to push for a journal publication. For others, for financial incentive, if I publish in a journal, I get financial incentives from my university. And then sometimes, because you support the community, it's all right to publish in that particular conference instead of a journal because you want to support the community. Some have friends, because you're part of community, you have friends who tell you, could you submit an article to a special issue I am editing? And so you think of what you can write based on an existing project that could put a slant and fit towards the objective of that special issue. So it's really up to you, depending on your goals. As a general rule, conference paper is less mature, a journal article is more mature. And then, again, from a practical perspective, what are your requirements and constraints? There are travel costs. Pre-COVID, there were travel costs, and then some registration, If it's conference, if it's a journal, there may be a publication cost. But an additional requirement for journals would be the ethics clearance if you are dealing with human subjects. And it takes a while. It's difficult to have to get an ethics clearance. So it's something that you may want to think about. So an ethics clearance is required from an accredited research ethics office. So a government, so the Philippine government accredits research ethics offices. There may be from schools. So UP Manila has one. I know Adamson has one. DLSU HSI in Cavite has one. So these are offices that could provide with the ethics clearance, especially if you're dealing with health-related projects, anything dealing with human subjects. I did work with kids with autism, so it's difficult to have to get the ethics clearance. So after you've done your reflection points, so these are questions you have to answer. And again, this is contextual. It depends it depends on your project, it depends on where you are, it depends on the resources of the university, it depends on your goals, and depends on the kind of results that you are able to produce at this time. So after that, you have your practical considerations. Number one, your lit review points to the right direction. So you know already, okay, I will publish in a journal, or I know this is worth a conference. So how do you know which one? So your lit review, your list of references, will tell you what your popular publication venues are based on your references. And so if you're very popular in the reference list is the Journal of AI Ed, then maybe your work fits Journal of AI in Ed. It looks funny that you will join a conversation of a cluster without citing any of the people's work in that cluster. So it is important that you cite works of people from that journal. So working backwards, if you read their work and you place it in your manuscript, then that means you're talking the language of these people in that cluster from that journal or from that conference. So that's your community. And then you have your mentor who will also point you to the right direction. The mentor can tell you, I think this work is good for this publication. This one, no, it will not match, no. So your mentor is a good source of advice for these kinds of situations. If you do not have a mentor, then you go back to number one, your lit review, or the senior members of your department, or some maybe CSP researchers can also, volunteer ko na po yung CSP. Maybe some people from CSP can also help you. And then number three, future plans. Your future plans points to the right direction. Now here's the thing. DOST is pushing for commercialization, no? And commercialization requires patenting your work. So I know some people who hold off publications because they want to patent their work. In some universities, a patent is also acceptable for promotion. So again, depends on your goal. This is something that you would have to think about. Now, the review process. The review process is a learning process in itself. The first thing is you wait. This is more stressful if it is a requirement for a degree program. You cannot graduate, not if you produce X number of journals or have it accepted in a high impact conference. So you wait, and then the decision arrives. So you breathe and you read the decision. You take note of the decision, conditions for acceptance, revisions, and comments. And then you breathe again and take action based on two. Now, I didn't put here if the paper was accepted or not, because regardless, I think you need to do the same thing. If it's rejected, there are a few things along the way, but it still remains to be take note of the decision, conditions for acceptance, revisions, and comments. Because remember, part of the reason why you submitted to a conference or to a journal is to receive feedback from that community, and we should be able and ready to accept these comments. Not that it is easy, it is difficult. When I was a young researcher, I had my work submitted to a conference, a high impact conference, and so when I received the the review, it was not accepted. It took me a month to tell Raymond. Raymond Season was my advisor. It took me a month to tell Raymond na, Raymond, alam mo, hindi natanggap eh. Hindi ko masabi sa'yo kasi ang sakit. Sakit-sakit. It's difficult to accept and I had to make time to face it and say, oo nga, it could have been better and the comments were helpful. But you see, the emotions come in first before the actual conditions for acceptance, revisions, and comments. Okay. So that's why I said, after the review process, everything you learn somehow come up to scrambles and you lose it. So rejection is a reality. I know some people, even if they are well published, also get rejection letters, and that is fine. So you breathe deeply and take it in. All authors would at some point have received rejection letters. We just have to deal with it and be objective and say, talagang I will see how this fits my work. I try to see it from the perspective of the reviewer. And then remember, you submitted to get feedback. Is it challenge or change course? Maybe you really did something wrong. Maybe I really did something wrong. So I have to assess. Do I proceed with my approach and take it as a challenge, or do I listen and say, I think it's not gonna, I think I'm going the wrong way. I have to change my approach. It's up to you as a researcher with the advice of your mentor. Okay, so to review, Publications 2020, The Whys and the Hows. You are a lifelong learner. You want to share your knowledge. You want to receive your feedback. You want to be part of the community. And again, as part of job security and promotion, it is important for us to publish. To become an excellent university, University of St. James has to ensure high quality staff, satisfy government regulations, attract students, and of course, augment its finances in terms of supporting research. We have said I subscribe to the developmental approach. Locate yourself where you're at. If you're already doing national conferences, then maybe it's time to graduate to Asia or regional conferences, or maybe go global. Nobody will know you got the rejection letter, so don't talk about about your submissions. Some people do that. I don't want to say I submitted to this high-end journal because you say they maud lot, but um who knows, right? Who knows? It just needs to be, I'm putting out my work, I'm putting myself out there, please provide me comments. And then you do your self-check, you have your reflection points. Where are you at now? What material do you have? And then, of course, you have your ORCID and you have your accounts, no, for your ORCID and your Scopus or Google Scholar. And rejection is a reality. You just have to breathe in and remember that we submitted to get feedback. And because um, we want to promote women in science, I place Marie Curie, to make us remember that nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so we may fear less. And I say this not in the context of COVID, but in the context of researchers who are a bit apprehensive in putting out articles for publication. For some people, it is intimidating. For some people, it's a bit scary. But it's just like taking a bath in Baguio without heater. No? Kailangan mong maligo eh. So talagang magbubuhos ka na lang ng malamig na tubig and see what happens. So in this context, you just really need to put out your ideas, open yourself to constructive criticisms and comments, and work from there, because in the end it becomes a very powerful tool for learning. So it is certainly not going to be an easy journey, but it will be worthwhile and fulfilling for sure. So I hope that at the end, the outputs of everybody in the workshop will be like this, no? Really fulfilled researchers who are able to contribute to nation building. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Suarez, for that very insightful talk. For some of us, nag-freshen up ang mga mga hugot natin sa mga experiences on our submissions sa journals and conferences. And thank you very much, ma'am. You told our stories, no? And we appreciate it. We now open the floor for questions. No? Are you all able to hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We now open the floor for questions. You may choose the Q&A button or the chat box for your questions. I prefer the Q&A button. Kung meron po kayong questions. Let's see the chat box if there are any questions. Okay. Okay, there's a question here. Hello, usually how much will it cost for a research journal?
It depends on the publication. We got invited to one 2 weeks ago, and if I remember correctly, it's 1,800 Swiss francs, and that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money indeed, no? Other questions?
Joff, may I clarify? Hindi naman lahat merong publication fee kapag journal. So CSP wala naman si journal natin, and even others hindi naman lahat. The concept of open access kasi is instead of the subscriber paying for access to your paper, you're giving them your article. So you're taking on the cost of the publication. So that's why it's a little bit more expensive. But there's also movement towards I forgot what it's called, where you put out your articles for free. No, walang payment for anything.
Okay, other questions? Perhaps I can ask this then. Good indicator ba yung tagal ng review process? Sometimes kasi there are conferences na ang bilis. I mean, parang nakakaduda tuloy.
Yeah, but of course, we want to be realistic, no? Typically, the review process will take 1 or 2 months, parang ganun. So but that's not a good way to look at it. The really reliable way will be to look at who the people are in that in the conference, no? So who are they? Are they from reputable universities? Are they real researchers? And then, is this the nth iteration? So is this the 10th conference of that nature? Or is it a new one? If it's a new one, yan, medyo nakakatakot yan. I had a student publish in a journal na bago lang, parang 1-2 years. And so I asked her, sabi ko, you have to check the editorial board. So when she did, sabi niya, ma'am, eto po yung editorial board. So, reputable naman sila. So, maybe they are starting a new journal. And so, we didn't have any problem with that journal naman. So, it's really you taking on your stalking powers to take a look at the researchers and the editorial board and try to see the people who are contributing to that conference or journal, and also the editors themselves, and also the reviewers are.
So dito dapat ginagamit ang stalking pala, no?
Oo.
Hindi sa ibang bagay. Anyway. Here's another question. No? Why is that it is easier to present and publish in international journals like IEEE than in local conference journals? I presented in Malaysia a year ago. So there's this phenomenon na observed niya that it's quite easier to publish in international journals than in local journals. Or conference journals, rather.
So I suppose this is an IEEE conference, no, in Malaysia. I really cannot say. I don't think there's I don't think we can generalize because there are hundreds of IEEE regional conferences and country-based conferences, and there are only few local conferences. So I don't have any generalization for
Mhm,
this phenomenon.
mhm, mhm.
I also don't know
Mm.
if that's a correct generalization.
Baka there are IEEE conferences that are more strict. There are IEEE conferences that are perhaps less strict. We cannot
Maybe.
easily generalize, no?
Yeah.
Okay, other questions po? Uh, okay, we'll wait for another minute. Napaka-insightful. I appreciate how you presented it, ma'am. Na very experiential and meron pang
Thank you.
person, no, object person na yung experience niya ay ni-relay. And we appreciate your approach and it's very insightful for all of us. Even yung no, I thank you, ma'am, for sharing the experiences on rejection because all of us experienced something similar, no? And nag-usap nga kami ni Thomas kanina eh. Even those who are involved in workshops perhaps are very hesitant to participate or natatakot pag magpe-present. And why kailangan mag-present parati? Well, that's ano nga ma'am, di ba? That's part of it. Thank you for reminding us of
Yes.
that.
Yes, that's part of it. And that's really how you learn how you learn to use the right words, how to present nang you don't ramble on, you establish eye contact. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. So ano lang pag- kumbaga I consider this a small community. Kumbaga tayo-tayo na nga lang, 'di ba? Tayo-tayo lang naman. Huwag natin ikwento sa iba. Ay, naku, hindi pala. Tayo-tayo na lang, no? We're a community.
Okay. Ma'am, here's another question. Do we have a guide list on accepted conferences and journals that are legit? Thanks.
What I did find, I could provide you with some, but what I did find was an article that actually tells you how to assess. So I'll provide that article to you, Joff, and so you could disseminate it to everybody.
Okay.
Kasi it's impossible to create an exhaustive list. Kasi a lot of things happen really quickly in the area, no. So it's difficult to provide an exhaustive list, but I think all of us will need to get trained to analyze and evaluate, valid conferences and journals. So I have that article. I'll provide it to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Are there any more questions?
Eto, Jo, Filipino panelists are more strict than other Asian panelists. I don't know. I can I can speak for myself, but I cannot compare myself with other Asian panelists, no, because I don't have data. When I review, I read each line and I sometimes correct grammar. So down to the grammar level, nagko-correct ako niyan. So if that makes me more strict, then I am strict. But I cannot say naman that other people who are not strict provide less quality reviews. That's also not correct, di ba? Hindi naman porket hindi siya nagda-down to the grammar level hindi magandang comments ang binibigay niya. That's also not correct. So that's one. And then another comment will be, do we want to look at it from the perspective of strictness or try to look at it from the perspective of how it helps the quality of the work? Kasi really, the review is meant to be to help the reader or the author improve the work. No, that's the whole point. So if by being more strict, the author is supported or provided help to improve the work, then I don't see anything wrong with it being strict. No? So parang maraming dimensions kasi eh. So ayokong tingnan ng strictness, mas gusto kong tingnan na nakatulong ba to sa akin bilang researcher. Kasi yun naman yung point. Others may look at it na ang strict naman, but the whole point is nakatulong ba siya? Will that strictness help me write an article for an international conference later on? If the answer is yes, then I'll take that comment, di ba? Kasi nakatulong siya talaga sa akin. So it's really more from that perspective that we're trying to see things.
Thank you very much for that.
Parang si Mr. Francisco, sigurado meron tayong article na may expect from him.
Yeah, yung spot on yung questions niya, no?
He's very keen, I think, to publish already.
Okay. There's another question here. I agree. I think this is more of a comment. I agree with the question that Filipino panelists are very meticulous and have a lot of comments compared to international panel. This sometimes discourages researchers from pursuing to present.
I say this from my personal experience. I'm not generalizing. This is just me. Because I did process myself during that experience when I was a PhD student. And I think it's a matter of culture. Kasi we just have to take it for what it is. No? It's just yung pagtanggap natin sa comments, whether it's from a Filipino panelist or a foreign panel member, really shouldn't be compared. Kasi if we focus on paano niya in-evaluate, we really lose sight of the fact that the question is, how do I improve my work? Did I do it well? And if not, what do I do? No, what do I do? So, I think we have to, that's not to say na hindi ko rin sinisi yung reviewer ko, no? Sinisi ko, ano ba naman to? Sinisi ko, hindi naman yata naiintindihan yung gusto kong sabihin. But, remember, that reviewer only has the manuscript in front of him. And that's the only way to judge your work, diba? So at that moment, meron ako emotional response. May emotional response. So, nakakainis naman, na-hurt ako. Ibig sabihin ba, hindi ko na kaya itong tapusin. But at the same time, no, nawala rin naman yung aking emotions. And after that, when I went back to the comments, I tried to see it from the perspective of the reviewer. Not that I agreed completely, but there was some worth, no, in what they said. So I think we are allowed that emotional response, but later on, consider the comments of the reviewer. And then, please do not be discouraged if a paper was rejected. That's just part of the process. We had the WCTP last week ba yun? Jimmy and Henry? We had WCTP, and I really admire the Japanese presenters because it's not easy for them to present in English. It's really difficult, even answering questions in English. But their professors put them out there and, sink or swim, sagutin mo yung tanong. Of course, the professors help later on, but only after they see na nahihirapan, hindi talaga magkaintindihan. But the courage of the Japanese young researchers to go there and present, they have their script, they're well prepared, the slides are really nice. Pagdating sa Q&A, dyan talaga very tricky for them. But you see the level of preparation, you also see how the kind of effort, kahit mas nakakatakot sa kanila mag-present kaysa sa atin kasi kaya nating magsalita ng English. They have a double difficulty. So I hope that doesn't discourage any of us from presenting because it's a happy feeling to have to share. Oh, ito yung ginawa namin, no? Tingnan mo. Diba? May certain joy yun. Eh. So I think that's something that you lose if you become discouraged. And we lose the chance to also hear you out. Diba? Mamaya pwede pala tayo mag-collaborate pero hindi namin narinig kasi hindi na-present yun. So there's a lot of things that get missed. So don't be discouraged in terms of presenting. Just keep on submitting manuscripts. And maybe submit to the right fit. So for example, if I submit a computer science paper on emotion analysis to Jamie for the IT journal, I don't think it's gonna get accepted because it's the wrong venue. So I suppose it's like that also. Yung fit then siguro, something we need to take a look.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Here's actually a request, no? Ma'am, can you give us some of legitimate publishers where you usually published your study?
Oh, so we will usually publish in Scopus Publications, no? So that's typically our venue for publication. So I'll take note of this. I'll provide. I suppose this also has something to do with the list of valid venues for publications. Na I said I'll forward to Joe. So I'll take note of this and then give you a list. So may I ask her back? I have a question for you. I suppose you did lit review. So yung lits na yon could also be venues where you could publish. So if you publish, for example, if you are reading, for example, an ICCE paper, then you could publish an ICCE. So, kasi doon ka nakinig ng conversation. So, doon ka rin magandang mag-publish. I think that's a good rule of thumb, no? Kung ano yung nasa lit review, doon kayo mag-submit ng articles.
Okay. Sige. Thank you very much. Other questions? We will still entertain questions, but if there are none, since our morning is packed, we would love to move on. Pero at this point, we would like to express our thanks to ma'am. Thank you for those questions, and we would like to share this certificate to Dr. Suarez, the Computing Society of the Philippines, in cooperation with Department of Computer Science of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Murdin Theodora Suarez, a PhD, for sharing her invaluable knowledge and insights in the field of research as guest speaker during this CSP online seminar workshop on research given this 28th day of November 2020. Okay, I hope you see that on the screen, and we'll be giving her a hard copy of that later on. Pero everything is soft copy in the meantime.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for that, ma'am. We really, really appreciate your talk. At this point, we will be. Do you have something to say, ma'am?
Ay, hindi, nagbababay lang po ako. Good
Okay.
po. And good luck to all the participants. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Okay,
God bless CSP. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much po.
Thanks, Young.
Okay. And at this point, we will be moving on to our second talk for the seminar. We will now ask again Dr. Thomas James Tiamli to introduce our speaker.
All right, so our next speaker has held various positions in many leading professional organizations in the Philippines. He's a technical committee member for IT education on the Philippine Commission on Higher Education, executive director of the Asian University Digital Resource Network, board of trustee of Computing Society of the Philippines, former president of the Philippine Society of IT Educators, and former vice president of the Philippine E-Learning Society. He was also a recipient of the 2016 Most Productive Faculty Award of Silliman University and second place finalist of Philippine Digibayani Award for Digital Literacy. Among his research interests is e-learning, local knowledge computing, and digital trust, where he has been recipient of some local and international research grants. He is a United Board Fellow and Director of Silliman Online University at Silliman University. So let us all welcome our speaker, Dr. Dave Marshall.
Good day, everyone, and I would like to thank all of you for attending and responding to the call for this seminar workshop and responding to the challenges in completing the workshop. I would like to thank the Computing Society of the Philippines also for inviting me as one of the resource speaker in this seminar workshop. The topic given to me is about research proposal, how to prepare, and where to submit. In the next few minutes, I will be sharing with you my experiences in writing research proposal towards a successful research project. So let me share with you my slides so that I can start my sharing. So the topic, as I'd mentioned, research proposals, how to prepare and where to submit. My slides, I prepared a couple of slides. I will talk about the goals of a research proposal, the key elements of a research proposal, common mistakes to avoid so that we cannot anymore repeat the common mistakes or mistakes by research proponents, no? And we can avoid this so that our research proposal will be accepted. I will be sharing also some practical tips from preparation up to the submission and even to the waiting time, the waiting of the notification of acceptance or rejection of the research proposal that we submitted. And I will be sharing also some categories or classification of funding agencies of the many research grants or projects, and some tips also on what to expect after submitting a research proposal. So this is Dave Marshall. I am from Dumaguete. I'm from Silliman University and currently the director for Silliman Online University Learning. So what is the goal of a research proposal? There are actually twofold of the goal of a research proposal, and this is actually interrelated.
I was told that it's not like a freeze video, though. I'll try to check it again, no? Share. Are you all able to see the screen? May I know if you're able to see the screen, the YouTube screen?
YouTube, yes, I can see.
Okay, okay. I'll try to play it, and I hope you're all able to.
Not anymore repeat the common mistakes or mistakes by research proponents, no? And we can avoid this so that our research proposal will be accepted. I will be sharing also some practical tips from preparation up to the submission and even to the waiting time, the weighting of the notification of acceptance or rejection of the research proposal that we submitted. And I will be sharing also some categories or classification of funding agencies of the many research grants or projects, and some tips also on what to expect after submitting a research proposal. So this is Dave Marshall. I am from Dumaguete. I'm from Silliman University and currently the director for Silliman Online University Learning. So what is the goal of a research proposal? There are actually twofold of the goal of a research proposal, and this is actually interrelated to each other. The first one is a research proposal is to present and justify the need to study a research problem. Again, justify that there is a need to study a particular problem. Second, this is to present the practical ways in which the proposed study should be conducted. So the
Okay, I'll try to repeat it from the start. I was told that pag naka full screen, it is nafi-freeze. No? So I'll try to not make it full screen right now, but I would like to have it from the start, if that's okay with you. And please give a feedback to me if everything is okay.
Good day, everyone, and I would like to thank all of you for attending and responding to the call for this seminar workshop and responding to the challenges in completing the workshop. I would like to thank the Computing Society of the Philippines also for inviting me as one of the resource speaker in this seminar workshop. The topic given to me is about research proposal, how to prepare, and where to submit. In the next few minutes, I will be sharing with you my experiences in writing research proposal towards a successful research project. So let me share with you my slides so that I can start my sharing. So the topic, as I'd mentioned, research proposals, how to prepare and where to submit. My slides, I prepared a couple of slides. I will talk about the goals of a research proposal, the key elements of a research proposal, common mistakes to avoid so that we cannot anymore repeat the common mistakes or mistakes by research proponents, no, and we can avoid this so that our research proposal will be accepted. I will be sharing also some practical tips from preparation up to the submission and even to the waiting time, uh, the waiting of the notification of acceptance or rejection of the research proposal that we submitted. And I will be sharing also some categories or classification of funding agencies of the many research grants or projects, and some tips also on what to expect after submitting a research proposal. So this is Dave Marshall. I am from Dumaguete. I'm from Silliman University and currently the director for Silliman Online University Learning. So what is the goal of a research proposal? There are actually twofold of the goal of a research proposal, and this is actually interrelated to each other. The first one is a research proposal is to present and justify the need to study a research problem. Again, justify that there is a need to study a particular research problem. Second, this is to present the practical ways in which the proposed study should be conducted. So the first one is to justify that there is a need to study or to conduct the research. And the second one is to present the practical means in which the proposed study should be conducted. Now, writing a research proposal is a critical process in any research endeavor. And the design elements and procedures for conducting research are governed actually by the standards of the predominant discipline in which the problem resides. So it means that a research proposal summarizes the question you want to answer through your research. At the same time, a research proposal should demonstrate your knowledge of the subject area and shows the practical means or the methods you want to use to complete your research. A research proposal should contain extensive literature reviews, and then you must be able to present or provide and to persuade the readers the different evidences that a need exists for the proposed study. In addition, providing a rationale, a proposal describes detailed methodology for conducting the research consistent with the requirements of the funding agency, no? And a statement on anticipated outcomes and or benefits derived from the study's competition. Now, what are the key elements of a research proposal? So, a proposal should contain all the key elements involved in designing a completed research study, and it must have the sufficient information that allows readers or reviewers to assess the validity and usefulness of your proposed study. Your proposal is an important part of the application process. This is actually the first step. And um, you should be able to have an effective proposal, or an effective proposal is actually judged on the quality of your writing, and therefore it is important that your proposal is coherent, your proposal is clear, and your proposal is compelling. Now, whatever research problem you will have, regardless of the problem you are investigating and the methodology you choose, all research proposals must address the following questions. First, what do you plan to accomplish? You should have a clear, direct, and be specific in defining the research problem and what it is you are proposing to research. Second, what do you want to do the research? In addition to detailing your research design, you also must conduct a thorough review of the literature and provide convincing evidence that it is a topic worthy of in-depth investigation. Be sure to answer the so what question. And the third is, how are you going to conduct the research? So be sure that what you propose is doable according to resources, feasible according to resources again, and practical. Um, if you have difficulty in formulating your research problem, again, you have to revisit and be able to understand the very basic components in writing a research problem. Now, in my next slide are the common mistakes that I got from the literature and incorporated also some of my experiences. Um, some of the common mistakes that I committed during the early stages of my research experience. First is failure to be concise. No, a research proposal must be focused and should not be all over the map, or should not be too generic or diverse into an unrelated tangent without a clear sense of purpose. You should have a specific point of view. You should have a specific lens where you look at a particular research problem.
You have, or there is a common mistake also of the failure to cite landmark works in your literature review. Proposals should be grounded in foundational research that lays a foundation of understanding the development and scope of the issue. Another common mistake to avoid is there is a failure to delimit the contextual boundaries of your research. Say, for example, time, place, people, and etc. As with any research paper, your proposed study must inform the reader how and in what ways the study will examine the problem. Another common mistakes to avoid in writing your research proposal: failure to develop a coherent and persuasive argument for the proposed research. This is actually critical, and in many workplace settings, the research proposal is intended to argue for why a study should be funded. You have to present exemplary evidences and need, and again, justify the practical ways and means so that there is a reason for you to be funded. Imprecise writing or poor grammar is also a common mistake. Although a research proposal does not present the entire or completed research study, there is still an expectation that it is well written and it follows a certain style and rule according to the funding agency. If the funding agency said it is in IEEE format, or if the funding agency said follow a certain outline or a certain format, then you really have to be precise in relation to your writing. In terms of the grammar, in terms of readability, you have to check out also with that. There are online tools that can help you improve readability of your proposal. Okay, and last but not the least, too much detail on minor issues, but not enough detail on major issues. So your proposal should focus on only on a few or key research questions in order to support the argument that you are trying to present in your study. Minor issues, even if valid, can be mentioned, but you have to remember that you should not dominate the overall. I mean, this should not dominate the overall narrative of your proposal. So again, there are actually at least 6 common mistakes to avoid. One is your research proposal, or failure to be concise, failure to cite landmark works in your literature review, failure to delimit the contextual boundaries of your research, failure to develop a coherent argument for the proposed research, and a poor grammar or imprecise writing. And last but not the least, there is no enough, or there are too much detail on minor issues but not enough detail on major issues. Okay, now how to avoid, or what are the different tips for us to be able to avoid this common mistake? Okay, so in the next slide there are actually tips that I am trying to share with you in preparing your research proposal. The first one actually involved your heart, your mind, and your body. So this is in relation to your willingness. This is in relation to your courage and in relation to your strength. Willingness to learn, willingness to learn new things, willingness to relearn if there are things that you already learned, and to unlearn things that need to be learned also. You need to have the ability to do something that surprises you, that frightens you. You need to have the quality of being physically strong, because writing a research proposal is not just a one night shot. It's not an overnight activity. It needs time. It needs concentration. and it needs so much time for yourself to really reflect and be able to write and do the analysis comprehensively in relation to your review, in relation to your method, so that the reader would really say, or so that you would be able to present that there is really a need and a reason that your project will be funded. Okay? Second, understand the call. Many funding agencies actually, they have their primer, they have their submission guidelines, they have their booklet. It actually varies. It could be 3-page guideline. It could be a 300 pages guidelines. Yes, that's really true, especially if you go for international funding agencies. It's a very thick primer that you have to understand. You have to read it word for word, and you have to understand the every details of that guideline. Now, make sure to get a copy of the submission guideline so that you will be guided from time to time when you write. You will be guided and then review and then open it and try to refer if there are things that might confuse you. And make sure to read and understand the details. And if you don't understand the details of that guidelines, inquire to the team, inquire to the staff, if necessary. But just make sure that all the inquiries are not just simply written in the guidelines, so that it won't appear that you are not reading or you're not doing your assignment. So inquire only in relation to explanation of a certain detail that you don't understand. Many of the research proposal are denied or rejected because the application is outside the scope of the funding agency. Your research proposal must be tailored to answer to a particular research question or questions that and there are key deliverables expected of a research outcome. Writing a proposal that does not meet the priorities of the funding agency will see the proposal obviously not to be considered. Actually, there are rounds of the review process. It could be according to the outline, it could be the format, or according to the scope. No, so when you write your proposal or writing for grants, ensure that you understand the key themes or the thematic areas that the funders are interested in, and tailor your proposal to address such issues. Again, the keyword here really is tailor. Be responsive, be able to respond. Kung baga, you were able to hit the bullseye. Kung baga, nakukuha mo yung kiliti ng funding agency so that they will be interested. No institution or body or funding agency will fund a proposal that does not meet their priorities expected of such research, but would rather go for a proposal that actually meets the priority areas the funders are interested in. So say for example, if you will try to look at this call for proposal from DOST, let's try to check this out. um, this is the call. You can see here there is a call for proposal, and then you will have the first is in relation to environment factor. You have the rationale, and then there are themes. This is the one that I'd mentioned, that there are specific areas like formulation and implementation of integrated air, revision, and so on and so forth. No, another areas also maybe you could look at in relation to. Oh, take a look. There is also the scope. There is even an objective, and then the specific objective of the call, and so on and so forth. Then another priority is also posted here. So you just have to attack which area you would want to focus, or which area or which priority you would want to tailor your proposal. Okay, so um, in writing your proposal also, especially in doing some or in understanding the guidelines, it is really necessary that you will be able to you will be able to go into the every detail of the submission guidelines, because it will really help you understand the scope, the rationale, the specific objective, and most importantly, the expected deliverables or outcomes that the funder would want to see in your research proposal. Okay, the third is be relevant and do not duplicate. So what is this? Respond to the problems and scope as stated in the guidelines. You have to read sample projects in the previous calls, and pay attention to the deliverables, pay attention to the publications, pay attention to the recommendations. The funding agency most likely they already have funded a similar project like yours. It is rare that a problem of regional or national and sometimes scientific significance is perceived in only one place at one time. So if the funding agency has already funded someone else who has approached the same problem in the same general way, a turn down is likely. And common rejections also when the subject is not relevant to an issue of regional and national importance, or even it lacks sufficient significant scientific significance. Funding agencies are not just looking for a way how to throw the money around and in the name of funding proposals. Most of the funding agencies are interested in funding proposals that are captivating, that are intriguing, and has the potential to impact positively on humanity and contribute to the body of knowledge. So when you next you are writing a proposal, ensure that there is something that is unique, there is something that can capture the attention, can get the attention of the reader, and something that it can make it stand out, no, among the other research proposal. You just have to bear in mind that submitting a research proposal is also like a competition. You have many competitors in that grant, and then your idea may be of the same idea with the others, but what is vital here, what is critical here, are your methods and the way you present your critical analysis that your proposal is worth funding. Fourth, two heads are better than one. So create a team, no? Create a team, fill in the gaps fill in the gaps and have the necessary skills in your team to accomplish the task. Many rejections also falls because proposal appears to be beyond the capacity of the principal investigator. Most of the time, funding agency are looking for submissions from a team, and if it is a team, there is a principal investigator, and there are also a team members. They call it sometimes component. There is also like project leaders, component leaders, uh, depending on the structure of the funding agencies. When the proposal appears to be bigger than the capacity of the principal investigator, it entails that such researcher lacks the ability and the technical know-how to conduct research, and such proposal will not sail through the first screening stage. So fill in the gaps. Make sure that you have your team the members can complement the necessary skills needed or required to the funding agency. So you look at if there is a need for you to create a team in an intradisciplinary, in a multidisciplinary, in a cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, or transdisciplinary. I am not saying that multidisciplinary is better than interdisciplinary, because again, it's still dependent on the guidelines of the research grant or of the funding agencies. Okay, so again, make sure that you discuss it with a team. You discuss it with other members of the team. What are the things to be done for you to be able to fill in the necessary skill or the necessary competency in achieving a certain research problem. Let's proceed. Fifth, follow the proposal template strictly. No, there are many rejections done because guidelines are not followed by the funding agency. No excuses. Excuses, even if you are expert in using a certain template, and because you are not comfortable using their template, you will insist and then put a note that blah 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 that I am using another. Don't do that. No, outline, styling, merits, and even criteria vary from funding agency to another funding agency, per funding agency, or according to the call for the research grant. Proposals, you have to take note that proposals are not generic, such as appropriate guidelines as provided by the funding organization. And some funding agency will even require the applicants to follow the guidelines, and being that the funding will be given to limited number of applicants, not following appropriate guidelines may be one of the disqualifying factor that will get your proposal rejected. uh, aside from following the guidelines, you have to make sure that all boxes or all necessary sections in your proposal are completed also. No, when thinking how to write research proposal and not fail, some researchers may be caught in the web while trying to submit a research proposal. Submitting an incomplete proposal is as good as not submitting a proposal at all. Why? Because the key issues that the assessors or reviewers of your proposal will be looking out for will not be captured in an incomplete proposal. So it is therefore advised to ensure that all the areas, all the sections required in the template or by the funder are duly captured in the proposal for it to be eligible for the consideration. Sixth tip, budget accordingly. No, um, common rejections also when the applicant has failed to demonstrate fiscal accountability. You have to look at, you have to understand what are the allowable items in the budget, what are not allowed, what are the items that may be allowed. May be allowed meaning it's not explicitly stipulated that it's not allowed, but there is a way to make it allowable or to be stipulated in your budget. You know, there are many ways to kill a cat, but all you have to do really is to look at item by item in the budget guidelines or budget requirement. Then you discuss it with your team, and then you inquire if those things are allowed or not allowed in the budget. Now, if the funding agency is from the government, especially from the Philippine government, you have to know the basics. Say, for example, what is the basic rate for a salary, for a consultancy, and what are the items that are allowed. Say, for example, items allowed under equipment, or items allowed under services. So make sure to understand all of these, and you can download some or relevant document for you to be able to get acquainted with on the budget preparation. You can go, of course, to the Commission and Audit website. You can find there some of the guidelines. But what I am sharing is a very specific guidelines of a very specific funding or a call for proposal. Say, for example, for commission higher education, you can download implementing guidelines of the on the grant of honoraria for CHED funded, and the other side is a prescribed salary rate for DOST grants in aid personnel. So things like this, because these are really basic. No, you really have to understand how much rate, how much rate for a man hour, for a mandate, and etc. When do you consider an equipment, like in the Philippines, if the equipment is below 15,000, that's considered as not under capital outlay or equipment. No, so things like those. There are specific guidelines guidelines into that. Make sure that your budget also is realistic. No, a good proposal must have a budgetary allocation that is feasible and realistic. Attaching a budgetary allocation that is not realistic to a proposal will see to it that the proposal fails. So budgetary allocation should not be written in a hurry, should not be written in just one night shot, and but rather the services of experienced researchers should be sought also if you want. Now, if one is not really abreast with budgetary allocation, there are some funding agencies or research grants that will allow you to hire accountants, that will allow you to hire bookkeepers, so um, better to actually include them in the team. Like in my case, I always look at what are the personnel allowed in the team. So if accountant is allowed, if a bookkeeper is allowed, I have to include them. Why? So that at least me being the principal investigator, I will not anymore take care the every detail and the technical detail in relation to finances or budget of the project. Okay. You have to be reminded also that when we say feasible and realistic budget, it should be that your research proposal, that the cost of your research proposal should not be greater than the benefit. What I mean is, um, there's your benefit, no, the benefit or the outcome is justifiable with regards to the investment or to the cost of the proposal. So say for example, baka you are asking for a 1 million, tapos yung benefit lang makukuha is only worth like 1,000. So things like that. There are ways to compute impacts. There are ways to calculate or to estimate outcomes and impacts. So things like this. Performing a research is aimed at solving a particular problem in the society that will benefit humanity. So committing resources to ventures that far outweigh the benefit is not economical. So funding agency most likely will only sponsor research with huge benefits and higher or greater impact as compared to the cost of carrying out such research in terms of human resources and funds and laboratory supplies. No, so as much as possible, make sure that it is really realistic, it's feasible. Okay, number 7, be timely, be on time, and prepare the work plan in accordance to the guidelines. Common rejection again, proposal deadlines are not met. Now, some researchers get their proposals rejected because they did not meet up with the proposal submission deadline. Just like while applying for scholarship, an application submitted after the deadline will not be considered irrespective of how qualified the applicant is. You have to track the submission timeline. Most of the, especially for big funding agencies, they have notification systems naman. Sometimes you have to create, really, you have your account, you have to log in, you have to create your account, and you will be notified about the submission timeline. You have to be reminded that deadline is deadline when you submit a research proposal. And please do not exaggerate the schedule. Like there are common mistakes that you have to, expand the deliverables, expand the activities. Like an activity could be done just simply in 6 months, but because you wanted it to make sure that it can be completed, you will flex it up to 1 year. So you have to take note also that there are many competitors of yours that might be submitting a very good time plan and a very good time analysis when it comes to the preparation of their work plan. Number 8, writing a research proposal is not an overnight work. It's really a no-no, a shotgun approach. It is clear to the reviewers or to the assessors when the applicant has not read or understood the agencies or the funding agencies' interest and application procedures, and has instead forwarded a generic proposal to many funding sources at the same time. No, the lack of match with the funding agency's priorities and criteria ensures really a turn down or rejection to your proposal. And I mentioned this already, that literature review must be comprehensive. Literature review should have a good grasp of analysis, and the reader should have a good grasp of what you are doing in its entirety. So a poorly written literature review actually exposes the researcher's knowledge base about the subject matter, and no funding agency will really commit funds to someone who barely understands what he or she is doing. Aside from that, writing a research proposal, methodology is must be adequate. Methodology must be comprehensive enough. And when a proposal may address a problem of significance which is important to the funding agency, but it may be rejected because the approaches is not accurate or not relevant or not appropriate, and the approach to the problem in a way that the assessors do not believe adequately to the test its own assumptions, or because it fails to ask the right question. So the applicant also has not included measurable outcome or indicators in the proposal is also a way to reject a research proposal. And without some means of measuring success of the project, funding agencies or funding grants or organization is most likely will not invest to the resources. So again, literature review is very vital, must be well written. You must have an adequate methodology, and you must have a measurable outcome indicator into your research proposal. Next, do what is required. No, the reviewer may take certain issue with certain aspect of the research proposal which relate specifically to the content, and like the required documents are non-negotiable if that is really stipulated in the guidelines. Like number one, you have to provide an ethics clearance, you have to provide privacy clearance, and so on and so forth. It's non-negotiable. Include that. You have to submit it. Do not insist. No, do not insist to the staff. Do not insist to the reviewers. Make friends with them, but you just have to make sure that you always trust what is written in the guideline, because reviewers are not necessarily part of the internal organization. Most of the time, reviewers are external from the organization or outside the organization, and they don't really go into the very details, but maybe look at or just simply follow what is written in the guidelines. Okay, so some studies, as I mentioned, some studies will require ethics clearance, ethics, um, and research integrity agreement, and so on and so forth. Just provide them. Okay, and you have to provide. You have to make sure that all sections or all items in the template or what is required are provided. And last but not the least, be ready and then set your expectations. No, be ready whether it is approved or it is to be rejected, and just set your expectations. Feel free. I mean, you just have to make sure that you have alternative courses of actions if that is declined or if that is rejected. What is next after that? Okay. Now, the half of my presentation is where to submit. No, for sure, many of you are familiar into this, but I'm trying to categorize funding agencies. No, the first one is internal or institutional grant. Like if we have faculty or teachers here, you may start with the faculty development grant provided by your own institution. There could be a departmental grant. I myself is a product into this. I started with a very small scale grant. It's like a 3 unit deloading in your department. It's a small, it's just like a baby step. It's for me to understand the process of writing or the process of doing research. It's not really a grand impact. It's not a grand research methodology, but what is important is I've started this. I mean, I was able to start writing a research and getting or have a success in the submission of my research proposal. Second is through government agencies. No, like on the screenshot that I shared, you can go for teachers here, for academicians here. We can go to the Commission on Higher Education, particularly on that link. Aside from that, there is a vast of call for papers from the Department of Science and Technology. You look at the councils, you look at the different institute of DOST. They have different research agenda. They have different and a variety of priorities that you can look at also. No, and there are specific scope also of the funding. There are specific objective also of the expected deliverable. So again, you have to go through into the primer, into the submission guideline for you to be guided. Okay, and the third one is you can also submit to some private or non-government agencies or even professional organizations. I'm sharing also with you a link here. Maybe you're interested of integrating technology from the Oscar M. Lopez Center. I'm one of the component leader of a project of a research grant here, the resilience grants program. No, the use of technology, transformative power of science and technology. So you can browse into the website, and it's a very interesting call for research, and they have a very exhaustive and primer also that you have to comply. No, and that it's actually downloadable on their website. And if you have more courage, no, and if you have more courage, more experiences, maybe you can check out also foreign international funding agencies and some cooperations. I am pretty sure that you are familiar with some of this. No, there are a lot. No, USAID from the Department of International Development, NSF. You can also look at Australian aid and so on and so forth. There are many. No, there are many funding agencies where you can submit. But again, you cannot just submit at any time because there are cycles also in the call for proposal. All you have to do is really to to start having your database of funding agencies. I myself, I have my own database of funding agencies, and according to schedule, according to cycle, and according timeline. So, say for example, in on the third quarter, I have to check this funding agency because they will be. I know that they are they are posting some call for papers, and some other time also I check out some other funding agencies and so on and so forth. No, so there are a lot, there are many. All you have to do is to start small, but think big, and many more. And before I will end, my last tip to you guys is when your proposal is rejected, don't be discouraged. Instead, make sure to compose yourself and be encouraged. Also, make the rejection as your tool to learn, no, and make that rejection your as your what's this as a lessons learned. And then you really have to read, you really have to read and understand the comments, the suggestions. There are comments that are really harsh, there are comments that are gentle, there are comments also that, you know, something like your 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 nonsense. No, there are comments uh that are that sometimes it's very it's not nice. No, there are, most of the time in my experience, there are comments that like during my first few years in doing research, there are comments that not so good to read. Sometimes there are comments that, you know, I have to sleep overnight before reading the entire phrases because I felt that that comment makes me a very small person. No, things like that. All of this you have to be honest with you, I have a database of comments. No, a database of comments, good, not so good, and bad comments, and I always make sure that those comments is my point of reference in my next proposal or in my other idea generation to submit a research or to conceptualize a research proposal. It's good actually to take note all of those rejections, all those comments and suggestions, because you have to consider, you have to take note that um, reviewers are not just one person. Most likely, reviewers are at least a minimum of three, and they have their own rubrics also. Okay. And if your proposal is accepted, you have to make sure that you can implement it well. You have to be true to what you have written. You have to be true to your words, and you have to manage well your project, which is actually the next challenging task in doing or in writing or in implementing a research project. So I hope I've shared something with you guys. If you have further question, you can email me. My email is demarshall@su.edu.ph, and you can also browse my website there. You can download the material that I shared with you and some of the tips in relation to research writing. So once again, thank you for listening. If you have further questions, feel free feel free to feel free to email me, and I would be happy to respond into that. And I would be happy also to collaborate with you in our future endeavors, to collaborate with you, because most of the funding agencies also, one of their criteria is collaborators of a certain research project proposal. So it would be good to have a diverse team compositions, diverse skills, coming from different institutions or coming from the different perspective of research endeavor. So once again, this is Dave Marshall, and I hope I've contributed something toward the success of your research proposal. Thank you, everyone, and good luck.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dr. Marshall. And actually, when Dr. Marshall acceded to our invitation to speak for this seminar workshop, it was actually scheduled for November 14. Since there was this typhoon that disrupted our schedule for November 14, and he was moved, all the talks for November 14 were moved to November 28 to today. He's not available anymore, but still he was generous enough to share his video with us. So nonetheless, we are very thankful for him, for his talk. Actually, we will not, I think we will not anymore entertain questions on his talk. We will be pulling all the questions up to for the last speaker. And anyone in the panel, I believe, can share or can answer questions. Even our last speaker will be able to answer these questions. But nonetheless, we would like to I would still want to share the certificate that we are going to give Dr. Marshall. The Computing Society of the Philippines, in cooperation with the Department of Computer Science of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, presents this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Dave A. Marshall for sharing his invaluable knowledge and insight in the field of research as guest speaker during the CSP online seminar workshop on research given this 28th day of November 2020. Okay, thank you very much again for Dr. Marshall. Actually, if you noticed, we are definitely not running low on insights and practical experiential wisdom this morning. And we will be hearing some more, a big dose of that now. No? So we'll be hearing from our next speaker, the final talk for this morning, and our speaker will be introduced once again by Dr. Thomas James Tiamli. Sir Thomas?
All right, so our final speaker for today earned her bachelor's degree and master's degree in applied computer science at the Ateneo de Manila University and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, respectively. She then obtained her doctorate degree in computer technology and education in Nova Southeastern University, Fort Lauderdale in Florida. She was a Fulbright Senior Research Fellow at the Pittsburgh Science of Learning Center at Carnegie Mellon University from 2008 to 2009. Her research interest is on computer applications in education, and she has published over 100 edited books, journal articles, and strictly reviewed conference publications, as well as awarded several research project grants. She is currently a professor at Ateneo de Manila University Department of Information Systems and Computer Science. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Maria Mercedes Rodrigo.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Jock, for the introduction. I will share my screen. Okay. I was listening in on the talk of Dr. Marshall, and it was all very, very good advice, and I agree with it 100%. He talked a little about preparing the budget, and at first I thought, oh yeah, Dave has covered it already. I don't have to talk about it anymore. But actually, he just sort of went relatively briefly. So he left me with some room to elaborate a little. But many of the things that I'm going to say, he kind of mentioned already. So forgive me if there's a little overlap, but I will try to minimize that overlap to the extent that I can. Okay. The budget proposal for your well, I'm coming here from the perspective of budget proposals for um, Philippine grants. The budget proposals for international grants might have slightly different headings, but I think the spirit of it is is very similar. Um, your budget proposal will be composed of usually personnel services, maintenance, and other operating expenses, and equipment outlay. Um, then personnel services will be divided into salaries and honoraria, and then MOE will be divided into things like travel, communication, supplies, utilities, professional services, and taxes. And then equipment outlay would be things like if you have to buy computers or specialized, let's say, like microscopes or something, some specific equipment that you will need in order to collect or analyze the data that you're going to be gathering as part of your research. All right. The budget proposal will look something like this. And Dr. Marshall said something, alluded to this already. So for salaries, these are the people who are working full time. Okay. And the rates that you get, like for example, itong 36,000 or this 27,000. Those are not arbitrary rates, and those are not rates that are based on the salary scales of your institution. Those are rates that are prescribed by the OST or by the funding agency that you approach. Some funding agencies leave it up to you to like if you're filing for an international grant, for example. Usually you have a little more elbow room to prescribe what kind of rates you want to give your personnel. But if you're filing for a government grant, let's say with UST or with SHED, then you have to follow the rates that are prescribed by government. And this is quite important. You don't have free reign. What you can use your discretion on a little is this rate here, the position here. So there are different levels of professional. So we're called Science Research Specialist 2, Science Research Specialist 1, Research Assistant, and so on. So these rates here, these positions have salary rates attached to them. So what you can do is you can assign a high level position to a particular role in your grant, and then that will entitle that person to a high compensation. However, please remember also that if you assign a high level position, that will mean that the person you give that position to also has to be qualified. If you give let's say science research specialist 3, there might be yes, the salary will be high, but also the expectation from that person will be high in terms of qualifications and experience. So just be aware of that. And the reason why I am emphasizing this is because sometimes I've seen grants where very high salaries or very high positions are stipulated, but the personnel whom they earmark for these positions and for these salaries are actually underqualified. And so, why will I pay, let's say, 50,000 pesos to somebody who maybe is just a fresh grad or has very little research experience? So you have to balance those things out. And I think Dr. Marshall said something like this also in his talk. Now, the honoraria here are for people who are working on the project part-time. So the project leader, the project staff who are only spending maybe 10 to 15% of their time on the project are only entitled to get honoraria. They're not entitled to get salaries. You might also have technical consultants whom you will pay about 3,000 pesos per consultation, maximum of 2 consultations per month. So you have to kind of be aware of that. Okay. There are references that I've put here on the slides. If you want to get the salary rates, they're available here at this link, and I believe the slides will be made available to you. So please go ahead and go to that link, and you'll see there are the different positions and the different salary scales attached to each position. And this is where you have to base your allocations for salaries. For honoraria, it's the same thing. There's a DOST memo with the honoraria rates per position, and you have to base your honoraria rates on this memo. Okay, what about maintenance and other operating expenses? This is where you budget for things like local travel, foreign travel, communication expenses. Communication expenses can be mobile, can be landline, can be internet. Okay. Then there's supplies, like if you need, let's say, electronic equipment or mechanical components or office supplies, that's where you put these items. If you are charging for utilities like water, electricity, and other expenses, that's where you put those under utilities. You need to check with the funder if they will allow certain types of utilities, because sometimes oh, hi Dave.
Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Marshall just joined us. I listened to your talk. It was very informative. I liked it very much. Okay. Okay. Just sorry, just wanted to say that. Okay. Check with your funder whether they will allow certain types of utility expenses, because sometimes they will not allow, depending on the funder, they might not allow water and electricity. They might consider that to be the what do you call, the counterpart of your institution. Training and scholarship expenses can include, like, if you are joining conferences or workshops or seminars, you can budget for them here. Then of course there's things like printing and binding, rent. Representation expenses are usually used for things like if you have meetings and you need to provide refreshments, or you have let's say consultations with experts where you have to take them out for lunch or for dinner. You can budget for those here. And then okay, now indirect cost. So the direct cost are items that directly contribute to the research. Okay, so spending on an interview with an expert is a direct cost because it feeds into the research immediately. Or if I am doing, let's say, data collection from let's say 500 students, and I have to give them a small gift of, let's say, 50 pesos per student, that is a direct cost because it is part of the data collection cost. Or for example, if I have to have, like now, we have all these Zoom meetings. I have to pay for my internet because I have to have meetings with my research staff. So that's considered a direct cost. Or if you're buying a computer which is being used for data processing, then direct cost. Now, indirect cost refers to expenses that are incurred but don't necessarily feed directly into the research. So like what? If you have, let's say, accounting personnel, sometimes you charge that to indirect cost because they are support personnel and they're definitely interested, but they don't actually do any data collection for you. And they don't do any data analysis for you. What they do is they make sure that your project is running. And this is very important. But it doesn't directly feed into the research. Or for example, you might have, let's say, publication expense. As you submit a paper to a journal, there's a publication fee that might be considered indirect cost, because it is publication of your work, but it did not actually pay for, it was not part of, let's say, the data collection or the data analysis, or let's say the program creation or anything like that. Okay. So by the way, to my colleagues who are listening in, if I'm wrong about anything, please chime in and correct me, because this is how I think about my about my budget. If I am mistaken, I am happy to take correction. It will make me better at writing my proposals as well. Okay. If you go to this website, this PDF here, this will give you some guidelines as to what expense gets charged to what line item. Okay, it's actually important, and Dr. Marshall said this during his talk. It's very important that you adhere to these guidelines quite strictly, because if you do not, that is actually basis for rejection of your proposal. Okay, now equipment outlay. You have to stipulate the equipment. Sorry, I keep saying laptops because sa ulo ko it's really laptop. You have to stipulate what computers or what cell phones or what other type of equipment you want to buy and how much more or less it's going to cost. There was a time, I remember my liaison officer at DOST wanted me to stipulate the actual make and model of the laptop. But in recent years, parang it has become a little more. They've been a little more forgiving. They just will accept actually a generic description here. But before, parang they wanted a recommended brand and so on. So again, this is something worth checking. If you have specialty equipment, like there was a grant where I needed to buy eye tracking equipment, for example, they might ask you for a model or a brand, just so they know exactly what it is that you're buying. Okay. Now, some tips, and this is a repetition of what I had said before. Salaries should match the skill levels of the people whom you are putting in the grant. Okay. It happened on one. I remember there was a proposal that I was vetting. They attached a very high salary level to a particular position, and yet the person whom they were trying to put in that position was basically a fresh grad. And I have nothing against fresh grads. We're all teachers, and we have the highest regard for our students, but they weren't quite commensurate to the salary that was being prescribed. So this was something that we questioned. If you're going to have a very high salary level, the skill level needs to be high also, and the experience level needs to be high. Also, the organizational structure of the grant needs to match the distribution of the work. And what do I mean? There was a grant that I was reviewing also that was very top heavy. What do I mean by top heavy? They had a lot of parang managerial position people who received a lot of honoraria as consultants. And there were very few lower level people who are actually doing the work. And I questioned that. I said, what are all these manager type people going to do? Are they actually going to, are they actually going to do any analysis? Are they going to write any programs? Are they going to create assets? What are they going to do? And after a lot of squirming, the proponents basically admitted that it was really the lower level people who were going to do the grunt work of, let's say, asset creation and programming and all those things. And the managerial types were really just going to oversee. So they were going to be, they were going to quality control and check. And so they're going to like, well, okay, that I guess is needed, but you don't need that many people. So parang there were too many people at the managerial level. What you want to be able to do, especially this project that I was describing, it was a program development project now. So clearly the bulk of the work really needed to be on the shoulders of the programmers or the systems analysts and ganon. These were the people who were going to be carrying the project. But so it makes sense that the money should go to them because these are the type of people you need. The manager types, if you have 2 or 3 really good managers, okay na yun. This particular grant had way more than 3. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to get specific. They had many more than 3. So and so you could see that it was a top-heavy organization, and not enough investment was being made on the people on whose shoulders the project rested. And some of the grants that I've written that are very development-oriented, practically all the money, or not maybe obviously not all, but let's say more than 60% of the money went to programmers, artists, script writers, that kind of thing. I mean, the projects I'm referring to are games. No? So it's the game developers, the artists, because they were the ones who were creating art assets and game assets, because they were the ones who were working on it day in, day out. And yes, I was the quality control. I was the one who oversaw the work. But the truth of the matter is they were the ones who were putting in the 8 to 10 hours a day, just crunching this code and these assets. So in the same, whoever's doing most of the work should receive most of the money. The people who are ministerial or admin or management, yes, they should get some money, but they shouldn't get the bulk of it. Okay. All right. The MOE should reflect the activities that will take place in the grant. When you figure out your MOE, you should think first about the activities of your grant. Okay, what do you need to do? You need to, for example, you need to program. You need to interview, let's say, experts. You need to test with representatives from the target audience. You need to let's see, what are the other things that we do? We needed to buy, in some cases, let's say, audio assets and some 3D assets, for example. These should be where the money goes in the MOE. So if there is if you're going to have let's say workshops with students and with teachers in order to this is a good example. One of the projects that I had that we recently closed, part of the activity was participatory design workshops with students and teachers. That means we had to have about 4 meetings with teachers and students, young students, these are grade school students, where we put them through these different card games, and these were physical cards, no? These weren't computer card games. We put them through several card games, and we had a method essentially where we gave them certain rules and they had to play the game, and we had to observe them and we had to interview them so parang this exercise of making them play this game and watching them and interviewing them and getting their feedback and stuff like that, that was part of our participatory design process. So our MOE included things like transportation, because we had to pick them up from their school and bring them to Ateneo. Then we had to put them, of course, in a room, and we had to we had to produce the cards mismo. We had to, of course, we had to feed them merienda, we had to feed them lunch because it was long. Like we started at about 8 in the morning, we ended about 1 in the afternoon. So we had to provide them and we had to do this like 4 or 5 times. So our MOE had to reflect those activities. So we had to have transportation. We had a big transportation budget because at any given time there were about 20 kids. So we needed 2 or 3 jeeps to pick them up and to bring them over. And then we needed to give them. So we had to have representation because there's merienda and there's lunch, and then we had to have printing expense because we had to print the cards and produce them and all that. So all of these activities that's what the MOE is for. You provide for those activities. And I'm sorry if I'm beating this to death because it seems so obvious, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes when people submit their grants, it's like, how are you going to pay for these activities? It doesn't look like it's there in your MOE. Okay, you'd be surprised. Okay. Tapos, finally, the equipment should reflect activities and outputs of the grant. And again, this is something that that again I can't seem to stress enough. And I will give you an example. There was a grant that I was reviewing again that was supposed to be about mobile learning. Okay, so the goal was to create these mobile learning applications, which the researcher was supposed to test out with different groups of students and so on. Okay, in the equipment, there were no line items for mobile devices. Okay, there was an item for a Mac. So the researcher wanted to buy a Mac. And so I said, why are you getting a Mac but you're not getting any cell phones or tablets? And the researcher was looking at me like, but why would I need those? And the researcher could not understand why I was asking that question. And what I was getting at is, you're doing something for mobile learning. How are you going to deploy? Are you expecting that the kids whom you're testing with will have their own mobile devices? Or so you expect them to install on their mobile devices and then um, run, parang they'll provide their own equipment. Isn't it better to have your own devices, install on these devices, and go to your testing with these mobile devices in hand so that, hindi na mag-install yung bata, di ba? And that was the only time that the researcher realized, oo nga pala. Yeah, it would make sense for me to have my own. And again, you'd be surprised because I think what a lot of people don't realize because I think when people think of their equipment, they're thinking of, okay, I want a new computer for myself, and therefore I want a Mac. This is my opportunity to buy a Mac. That's not how it's supposed to work. You buy the equipment that you need to conduct the research. If it so happens that you need a Mac for development, then fine, go buy a Mac. But if you're doing mobile learning, don't just buy a Mac. Buy also tablets, and don't just buy one kind of tablet or one kind of cell phone. Buy several kinds because your application needs to run on all these different platforms, and you need to be able to test them on all these different platforms. So parang I don't know. I don't know if it dawns on people that that's the way it's supposed to work. And if your equipment budget doesn't reflect those activities, then again it becomes basis for rejection of the proposal. Okay, sorry. All right. So strive for consistency. Okay, these are the themes that I really want to emphasize. You want to strive for consistency with your method, between your methodology and your budget. Your budget is supposed to reflect how you're going to implement your methodology. And the methodology has to resonate with the budget. So so when we review your proposal, we don't just review na parang when we review, we don't just review thinking okay, this seems reasonable, parang okay, they're not asking for that much money, sige, go na. No, that's not how we review at all. We check your methodology, we check your work plan, and we look at whether those things, whether the budget aligns with the methodology and the work plan. Okay, because if there's a disconnect, if there's a dissonance rather than a resonance between what you're proposing to do and what you're spending on, then why are we giving you this money, right? And I'm speaking, of course, from the perspective of a reviewer rather than the perspective of somebody who applies. And so, but as from the perspective of somebody who applies, that's what I think of also. Parang you're essentially costing out each activity. And I have a colleague from the biology department who writes the most amazing budgets. He really does. Because his work requires him to go out into the field and collect biological samples of, he studies insects. And so he really has to go out and collect insects. So when he writes his budget, let's say sometimes they go to Palawan, they go to Negros, they go to all these places and collect insects. No? He writes down airfare from Manila to, let's say, Manila to Busuanga is this much. The jeep ride from Busuanga Airport to the hotel where they're staying is this much. The room cost at the hotel is this much, and then the field work, like we have to rent the jeep for 3 days to go to this area. This is how, ganun siya magsulat ng budget niya. And that's like super OC. He's down to the centavo sometimes. And it's a very inspiring way of writing a budget, because you know where every single peso is going. Of course, it's not always convenient or practical or even realistic to do that, because sometimes, like when you're estimating, for example, airfares, sometimes airfares change. Diba? If you go on a weekend, it's different from if you go on a Tuesday or something like that. So you can put round numbers as estimates. That's understood. That's understood. But the more precise you can be, and the more more aligned you can be with the different activities of your grant, the better for you, the more convincing it is that your budget is actually realistic and correct. Okay. This was my last slide, but I have a little more time, so I'm just going to talk a little about budget realignments. And I'm sorry I didn't put it in the slide set anymore. Now, what if in the middle of your grant you realize that you allotted too much money for this and you didn't allot enough money for that? Okay, this happens to almost every person, and this is not unusual. This is not wrong. This happens to me many times, and so when that happens, you have to file for what's called a budget realignment. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that there was a grant that we applied for before. We did not budget in for the purchase of our game development software. We were going to buy Unity, or we needed to use Unity, but we didn't budget in for it because at the time that we wrote the grant, Unity was still free. Parang if you were not a professional developer, or if you were not developing a game for profit, you were still allowed to use Unity for free. So we didn't budget in for it. That was okay. But then sometime in the middle of our grant, all of a sudden Unity changed policy. So they all of a sudden, if you were, it wasn't anymore a question of whether you were producing a game for profit or not. It became a question of how big an organization are you, and if you are an organization of a particular size, then you need to pay for it. And so we had to go back and forth with Unity a little bit. And we said, what do you mean an organization of, let's say, 500 or more? Kasi kami, dito sa lab, dito sa project, we're not even 20 people. But if you consider Ateneo as a whole, then definitely we're more than 500 people. So what number are we looking at? And they said, well, we really mean your entire organization, all of Ateneo. So you have to pay for it. And that was a problem for us because we didn't budget in for it. And so I had to write a letter to the fund, and we really had to look at the budget and scrape money from different line items to have enough money to pay for the license. And I had to write the funder. They usually have a form for this. So you fill out the form, and you show the previous budget and the realigned budget. So side by side yan dapat. So where did you get money from, and what stayed the same, and where did where did the money go to? And then you have to explain. So you fill out that form with the new versus old budget, and then you have to explain why. So I had to write a few paragraphs explaining that Unity changed its policy and ganyan. So if you have a good rationalization, then it's usually not a problem. But you also want to be careful, because you can't be realigning your budget every month. In fact, I think most funders will have a limit of, let's say, two times. You can only realign twice, or you can't realign if you're on the last quarter. You have to check. No, up to when, how many times can you realign, and up to when you can realign. So you have to be very careful, because you want your original budget to be as reflective of your proposal as possible. If you realign your budget too radically, let's say there's all of a sudden you have to take out 3 personnel and you have to buy more equipment. I mean, radical shifts like that, you might be questioned. And in the case of the OST, if your realignment exceeds a certain percentage of your budget, you might have to undergo a more thorough approval process. If it's a relatively small realignment, it's usually not a problem. It's usually approved without. It's just like an FYI. You don't need approval. But if you're realigning, let's say 50% of your budget, then that actually reflects badly on you as a project manager and as a researcher, because that means that you didn't adequately foresee your costs, or maybe you really didn't think about the costs of your methodology or of your equipment carefully before you realigned your budget. So Dr. Marshall said that writing a budget is not like it's not just a few hours work. It's actually several days work, because you really do have to reflect upon it and really think, parang, how much is this workshop going to cost me? How much is this data collection going to cost me? How many people am I going to send to this conference? So how much do I have to budget in? So ganon. You have to think about it very carefully before you write those numbers in. Okay, so it might, and you have to talk to people, talk to other grant proponents, talk to your liaison person at the OST. Try to get their perspective also. No, parang, is this too much? Is it too little? Ganyan. Or pwede ba to? Ask questions so that you can make your budget as realistic and as manageable and as representative of your work as possible. Okay, I think at this point I'm going to stop. This is all I had, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rodrigo, and actually we appreciate how things have fallen into place. The flow as we see it right now. And I repeat it, we are definitely overflowing with so much experiential and insights, experiential, practical wisdom on the area of project proposals, research project proposals. So at this point, Dr. Marshall is also here, and we now open the floor for questions on these two areas. Actually, the last two talks were more on research project proposals. First one is on the preparation. The next one is more detailed on line item budgeting. Okay, so you open the floor for questions. There's actually one already here. Can we have a copy of the slides presented?
Yes.
Okay, and I think Dr. Marshall even mentioned that it's available in his site, right? Yep. Other questions?
Jeff, I'll email you my slides now.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the group? While we're waiting for some, I hope I can be allowed to ask a question also, no? When it comes to budget preparation, of course, we choose equipment that is relevant to, that resonates the research and the methodology involved. For instance, if we need a particular equipment, let's say it's a machine or a laptop, do they have a particular? Oh, you said that it's more general this time, right? It's more of a generic description, not really more on the particular brand. But do they have a price range already for that?
Wala naman sa pagkakaalam ko. They don't prescribe a price range because sometimes like if you're doing, for example, analytics, you need more a higher end laptop, diba? So as long as it's rationalized, if you're asking for a higher end machine, it's because it is needed for production work of some kind. But if all you're going to do is word processing, because you're asking for something that's very high end, then they're going to start thinking na baka mag-games na yung mga to, diba? So it again with the resonance, diba, and consistency.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, ma'am. Other questions?
I wanted to maybe say something in response to Dave's talk. Dave ended kasi with advice and don't be discouraged. Can I just echo that? Please don't be discouraged. When I started, I got rejected all the time. I still get rejected. All the time. So you will, but what's important, I think, is to keep trying and to learn from the process, because rejection is just part of life. Don't be, just try again. I think lahat naman tayo. I'm looking at the names. I mean, there's Henry, Rachel, Randy, and Dave, of course. Lahat naman tayo, di ba? Lahat naman tayo. Na-reject naman tayo. So it's okay. It's okay. And you learn quite a lot from the process. And don't feel like it degrades you as a human being or as a researcher, as a professional. It's a learning experience.
Okay, here's a question, no? Hello po. I have to put on my glasses. there are ready budget allocated for research proposals like TOST. There are tendencies for teams project assigned in an institution to fit to the given budget rather than fit to the research proposal? What are your insights?
I'm not sure. Wait, sorry, I'm reading the question again to make sure I understand it. So in other words, it's about, do you fit the budget to the research? Well, okay. I think, and Dave, feel free to chime in. No? My own perspective of this is that there are, because there are how do I say, there are tiers of approval. If your budget is less than 5 million, again, to the others, to Randy, Henry, Rachel, if I'm wrong, just please chime in. I think if it's 5 million and below, you can get approval at the technical panel level.
Yes.
And then if it's over 5 million, then it goes up higher to the executive committee. So if you can frame your budget, especially if you're a new researcher, if you frame your budget so that it's less than 5 million, approval is relatively easier, or maybe not easier, but faster. But if it's over 5 million, mas maraming proseso. Ngayon, if you can, what you want to do, I think, is to establish that you have a track record. You're capable of delivering on what you promised. So if you can frame your project so that it is achievable, so you get some early wins, and you can fit that in 5 million pesos or less, then it's actually good for you, because then the next time you ask for money, you can say this is a continuation, and here, this is what we've been able to accomplish. We did a good job, and you can trust us with bigger sums of money. So I think, I'm not sure if that like directly answers the question, but those are my thoughts. Dave, okay, you have thoughts?
Yeah, my perspective into this is you just look at the budget. If you feel that your project is too huge or too small for the budget allocation or requirement, then you have to qualify also your research proposal. Most of the time, uh, for new researchers, parang nahihirapan to fit in all items or all guidelines, parang pipilitin na talagang makukuha yung amount, especially on the ceiling. Hindi siya dapat ganon. If you feel that your project proposal is too huge for that, too big for the limits or the ceiling, then better not to apply. Find for another grant, something like that. Kung baga, it's more on the matching challenge. You have to match the what is stipulated in the call and to your proposal. I can feel you siguro yung sinasabi mo na you just have to fit in na lang kung ano yung sinasabi ng guidelines. Siguro pag sinasabi ng guidelines na you are only allowed to spend 30% capital outlay of the total budget. So something like that. Tapos gusto mo lahat ng amount or ng proposal mo, funds ng proposal will go to the instrument or to the material. So something like that. Really, it's matching and then respond to the call, and then if you feel naman na hindi siya appropriate to the allocation, ika nga sabi ni Dr. Rodrigo, you have to match also the skills or the requirement, no?
Okay, thank you very much for those answers. Okay, there's a question here. Do you have any suggestions for someone who would like to propose a topic on theoretical computer science? For instance, suggested funding agencies for these types of research? Research on theoretical computer science.
Oh, Henry, ikaw daw.
May funding ba doon? I only need coffee maker lang kailangan ko eh, tsaka tissue paper. Si Joy pala nagtanong yan.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestion for someone who would like to propose topics theoretical science? Funding agency. Well, funding agency is always very hard, but you can try National Research Council of the Philippines, Division 2. But the funding, the funds is not so big as compared to the OST. CHED would always pretend that they will understand theoretical computer science, but you can try also. Most of these are understandable kasi the Philippines cannot actually afford to do things that are not useful for the next 5 years. So most of my funding as a theoretical computer scientist and discrete mathematicians is from the university, yung local funding na sinasabi ni Bai. Only before the time of Secretary Montejo, I was able to obtain some grants from the OST. Thereafter, hindi na, mahirap na. Ganun. So topics about theoretical computer science. Computer science is all about algorithms, algorithm developments. So when you study algorithms, you will never run out of problems. Because if there's an algorithm that runs in exponential time, you want it to be polynomial time. If there's an algorithm that runs in 10 to the k, you want an algorithm that runs in 10 to the k minus 1. That is already an achievement in the theoretical computer science, so to speak. And so there are a lot of things that you can do in theoretical computer science, but you need mathematics to do that. So things that are done by Didit, done by Dave, by all the colleagues, will have some foundational results from things that we are doing, which are not useful for the next 5 years. I hope that makes sense. Nah? You put me on the spot. I am not actually prepared. Thank you, Oisin, and thank you,
Oh, you did.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I have
sir.
questions for both of you, Didit and Bai. It's in the
Yes.
chat box. Thank you, Sean.
Chat back.
There's a question. Can you give us tips on how to create a good literature review? And since the pandemic limits our traveling includes library visits, can you suggest online resources? Dave, you talked about lit reviews. Baka you can take this.
In the lit reviews, ito yung una kong ginagawa. I have to read first the scope of the call. Read the scope and then look at the research questions that the funding agency would want to answer. From there, I look at theoretical concepts about it. Kung baga hahanapin ko yung ano yung pinaghuhugutan ng funding agency. Hahanapin ko yan. I have to dig into that literature. Normally kasi sa mga primer ng calls, may mga citations din sila. Talagang susundan ko yung citations. I go to that citation. Pag nakita ko yun, hahanapin ko din yan. Parang I have to locate the original sentiment of the call para maintindihan ko ano yung gusto ng funding agency. From there pag ako mismo naintindihan ko na yung call, that's the time that I have to look at the literature. Online, I go for online really publications. Be careful pala be careful kasi in the research proposal, mas maganda talaga pag lahat ay what is this? Peer reviewed yung mga references natin. And then it's also a plus factor citing publications produced from the funding agency, no? Kasi makikita parang mafi-feel ng reviewers or ng funding agency na talagang you're doing your job, you're doing your assignment. And then may mga methods, may mga may mga framework na on the literature review ngayon. With the analytics, meron na. You can actually look at JS Store and some other analytics that could help you find more related reviews. I'm not sure if you are if you are keen or you are very observant when you Google or when you search like in Scopus, may mga suggestions na literature. Talagang kinukuha ko yan. I have to go into that. When I click, there are another suggestions until magkaroon ka ng framework. Basic lang sa akin yung follow simple protocol. Parang ano yung input, ano yung process, at ano yung deliverable, especially when making your concepts in the conceptual framework of your literature. Minsan kasi may mga funding agency that they don't ask for theoretical foundations. May mga funding agency naghahanap din ng conceptual literature. So depende. At isa sa mga best practice ko talaga is I normally write literature according to theme of the call for paper. Halimbawa, pag sinasabi ng call for paper or call for research proposal, yung theme niya is about data analytics in education, I have to look at ano yung mga theories behind or concept behind data analytics in education. Tapos dun mo ipapasok yung research problem mo. Yun lang by Henry, and to the rest.
In terms of online resources, well, this Google Scholar talaga is your friend, especially now during the pandemic. There are links to full text articles naman. One of the things I love doing is looking for meta-analyses also, and other reviews of literature for the area. So for example, I had to do a review for, let's say, mobile games. There are actually lots of meta-analysis already on mobile game applications and how effective they are in particular subject areas. So these give you a good starting point na parang it also helps guide your development of your thought process. Okay, there's a question for unseen expenditures or the contingency budget allocations. Depende sa grant giving body. Some grant giving bodies will allow you to explicitly put contingency and others will not. So the thing to do there is to actually build it into your budget. So for example, your expected travel expense is, let's say, 10,000 pesos. You can make it like 12,000 instead of 10, just so you have a little wiggle room. Ganun. Okay, there's a comment. CHED grants about 25 million given to submit a proposal on specific topic. What happens if the proposal was accepted but not met as targeted due to limit? Oh, nako. Was not accepted but not met as targeted due to limitations on human and equipment resources. Does anyone have experience with this? I'm actually not sure.
This should not happen. This should not happen.
It should not happen. It should not. I think, yeah, that's very bad.
Inantay kong sasabihin mo yan.
I think this will be on the researcher's cost.
Yeah, it's very, very
You have
bad.
to deliver what was promised.
Yeah, I don't.
And you
think
have
it's
all the chance to do the realignment and so on. So.
Right, you can do things like you can request for extensions. I think even the UST will allow that. You can request for extensions, and but if you really cannot, I think you have to talk to the funder. You have to meet with CHED and ask. Well, definitely you have to return the whatever is unspent from the budget. Tapos, pero hindi ko alam, like, kunyari you use part of it na. I don't know if you're expected to return like the part that you spent. So I don't know. I think this is Dave in his talk was talking about courage and bravery. Yes, you have to be brave, but you also have to be realistic. Na parang huwag kayong papasok sa grant na sa tingin nyo hindi nyo kaya or hindi nyo gagawin. Because I mean, the bravery and the courage has to come from a place of confidence also, that you have to be able to, that you know that you're going to deliver. But if you're entering, that's why start small. So don't start with 25 million. Start with 1 or 2. And then, pag malakas sa loob nyo, pag alam nyo na nakaya nyo, saka kayo mag-25. Pero yung nakatakot kasi yung papasok ka sa malaking grant, tapos hindi ka sure, or you have doubts about your human resources. Hard, very hard.
Oh, that is a very difficult situation to be in. Anyway, any more questions from?
And actually, it's better if anyone coming up with a proposal, it's better that you have already some ideas that you are 10% sure that it's going to happen. Often, it's better to give a proposal starting with a small results, and then if they think the results is feasible to grow or to scale, then that's the time you look for big funding. So normally, what we do in the department is in the lab is we do some small research to start the thing going with, for example, 50,000 grant, 50,000 K grant, and then or 30,000. I started with 15,000 grants before, and then when I finally realized that it is feasible, then that's it. And I look for some bigger amount. Then I will not, with high probability, I'll be able to deliver at the end of the show.
Yes.
Just a tip. Thank you, Chef.
Yeah, and I think that when you have very large grants, you also, it's more than just your capability as an individual researcher. It also reflects on your capability as a manager and as a mentor. Because if you have if you're talking about a grant that's 25 million, that's a big team. That's like para kang nag-startup. That's like what, 12, 15 people on your team, and lots of consultants, and I mean, unless a large part of it is equipment purchase, no? Pero it's a large team. So how confident are you that you're going to be able to manage this team and keep them on track? Kasi pag hindi ka, if you're not a good manager, then again, this is maybe you're not ready, or maybe you have to get a manager to keep everybody on schedule and on track.
Can I comment on that question as well?
Of course, please.
Yeah, I've seen that happen quite a bit when there are graduate students involved in a research project, and then the graduate student drops out. So just something to be aware of, and try to be careful of for those who are advisors of graduate students.
Thanks for that, Ma'am Annette. Any other question?
I have a request.
Okay, sir, please.
So to all the colleagues, ako si Henry, ako yung nagsasalita. Okay. I would like to ask everyone, the panelists, or at least Didit and Dave, and all other researcher, colleague researcher, to please provide everyone on insights on how to start writing research proposal, or where to find problems to start with, so that it will, and how to allocate budgets when I found one problem to do for my project proposal. Where to find possible problems, how to find them, how to identify them. Can you give some insights on how to do it, so people can start doing their proposals out of us? Thank you.
Dave, ikaw muna.
Sige. I think it should start from within yourself. I mean, if you have some curiosity, say for example, to your specialization, you look at your specialization, check out your ability. Say for example, if you do Like in your master's thesis or in your bachelor's thesis, ano yung ginagawa mo dati? And then you check the recommendations or you check the deliverables. If there are things that you want to, if there are things that you are still curious about it, then that's the start. And then from there, if you have the problem na, for sure naman tayo may kanya-kanyang gustong gagawin in terms of the academic endeavor or exercise. Halimbawa, ako, I decided to shift my research interest into e-learning. Then from there, I have to make sure that alam ko ang mundo ng e-learning. Kilala ko yung kasi aabot yung stage na parang kilala mo na kung sino yung reviewer mo. Aabot kasi ka sa ganyan na yung parang when you submit that to this funding agency, parang mababasa mo na kung sino kaya magre-review nito. Yung mga ganon. So you will know kumbaga you will know the politics na. So from the problem, start collating ano yung mga possible funding agencies, no? Wag ka munang magsulat. Wag ka munang magsulat. At least you have a framework of your problem, a research question into your mind. From there, you look at funding agencies, no? Ano yung specific kasi baka yung question mo, research question mo is not necessarily relevant or within the jurisdiction or within the framework of the funding agencies. Then, babasahin mo talaga one by one ano yung required or ano yung research question. From there, try to realign. Ask yourself, kaya mo ba yan? If if you can twist the research question kasi that's not originally planned, then start writing na. Rather than you write your research proposal tapos hindi mo alam kung anong anong kailangan, what are the guidelines or the specific needs ng funding agency. But honestly, I had an experience writing something like a generic research proposal kasi it was like a workshop and hindi ko alam na deliverable pala ng workshop is submitting it to the funding agency. Then at that moment when I wrote it, wala pa akong specific funding agency. So what I did is I tried to browse ng mga networks kung anong funding agency na pwede intong research proposal. But it's not that kung ano yung nasulat mo, that's the one that you will be submitting it to the funding agency. You still have to revise it according to their call for proposal. Hindi siya yung hindi siya yung tipong susulat ka lang kung anong gusto mo tapos saka ka maghanap ng funding agency. Hindi eh. You start from your problem and then expand it guided by the guidelines and requirements of the call for paper. I think yan by Henry just to answer yung where to find problems to solve. It's dalawang perspective eh. Pwedeng galing sa iyo na kasi gusto mong gawin yan and pag nasa level ka na you wanted to respond na and align what is needed from the funding agency, pwede din yan. But I think based on my experience, parang I started with kung anong gusto ko and then try to ask most of yung kay Henry 15 you started 15,000, di ba? I started 3 unit load.
Talaga?
Oo, I started 3 unit load. I started 3 unit load para lang ma-practice, ma-experience on the process of
Nasa Baguio ko noon nung 15,000 sa Baguio.
So I started it with a 3 unit load ng university. Tapos sa university naman usually kasi encompassing lahat ng research team eh. In other words, lahat pwedeng tanggapin. So from there, yan, pinapasok ko yung gusto ko na research problem. And then, mentoring naman talaga pag mga small grant, di ba? So, mentoring, developmental, doon ka matuto in writing a research proposal. Then, after that, because it's a mentoring grant, hindi na pwedeng umulit. So, I tried leveling up. So, nag 50,000 grant still from the university. So, ibang research guideline pa rin, but I'm still anchoring my research problem on my previous question. Kaya if you will find my publications, it's parang may mga project ako na sequel, parang part 1 ganito nga year, part 2 ganito na year. Kasi yung part 2 is a result or a recommendation of my part 1 project. So yung funding agency ko, hindi na mahihirapan on allocating, on understanding the research question kasi I normally start it with based on the result of my project funded in this blah blah blah, I need to blah blah blah. So ganun ba?
Yeah.
I hope it makes sense.
Can I
please, Didi.
provide an answer also?
Please, thank you.
I agree with Dave na a lot of it has to begin with your research, your interests, where you think your heart lies. No? But sometimes it's hard to find exactly where your heart lies. So also, and that's exactly what happened to me. It took me a while, even after my master's. When I did my master's, my thesis topic was it was like the most convenient thing that I could do. Convenient in the sense that there was an advisor who was willing to work for me. Kung ano yung topic niya, sige, yun na, para lang makagraduate. But then after my master's, I didn't pursue that area anymore. My master's was on parallel programming. Wala na. After that, hindi na ako nag-parallel programming ever. And it took me a few years, about 5 years, to realize that I really wanted to get into technology and education. So Dave and I are in a similar field. And then even after my PhD, which I finished in 2002, parang I still wasn't satisfied. I felt like the kind of technology and education that I was doing wasn't computer science heavy enough. Parang it was very education, but not enough CS. So naghanap na naman ako. So it was this long thought process. It took me another 4 years to meet people and to realize that, pwede pala, meron pala tong educational data mining, AI in education, learning analytics, meron palang ganun. So, it's a slow, very long process of discovery. And so I think that, what did I learn? What are my tips from this process? One is to listen to yourself, to listen to where your interests are, ano sa tingin mo yung kulang na, like in my case, I was looking for more CS content. Where are your interests and what are the intersections of your interests? Second is to actually network with people. If you have the benefit of good mentors in your university, that's great. Talk to them, talk about what they're interested in, and ask yourself how you feel about that. Really, sometimes it's a gut reaction na parang you listen to something and you feel really, really sleepy and like, no, I don't see myself doing this. And other times you listen to something and your eyes are open, your ears are open, and you're like sitting at the edge of your seat, like, yes, it's so interesting, tell me more. And when you feel that way, that's a hint that maybe that's something that you should do. So listen to your feelings about something. Tapos, it's also really helpful to go to conferences. Go to, for example, the CSP conference. Diba? Did you see what I did there?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, go to the CSP conference, listen to the talks. Take a moment to talk to the older people.
That's bad.
The more senior people are there. Mabait naman kami, come up, sit with us, have lunch, ask us what we're doing and whatever. And if you have the time and the resources to go to international conferences, go do the same thing. Be a little brave about, reaching out to people. So parang I think in this process of soul searching, you have to be willing to talk to people, communicate, get inputs from others, and see what your response is, what your visceral emotional response is. Because if it's something that appeals to you, you'll feel it in your gut, and if it's not, you'll get bored and you'll fall asleep. Okay, so that was at least my experience. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. We have one sir, you're gonna say something? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. So, dadagdag ko lang sana yung sa sinabi ni Ma'am Didit regarding networking. So, by the way, I am Justin po from Computer Science. I would like to speak in behalf of the young researchers, no? So by the way, I'm di naman po sa
Young
mga
researcher,
mayabang.
no?
I had,
Young.
bali, project leader sa po ako ng 2 projects already at my, I'm just part of DCS, but around 2 years. I started as a project officer in one of the projects, and according nga po dun sa sinabi ni Ma'am Didit about networking, actually nakakuha po ako ng mga ideas on crafting a research proposal from those networking events. So there are a lot of government agencies actually have different problems that might also interest you. So important po yung networking, no? So you talk to different persons who have different problems, and it might relate also to your one of your research interests. So pwedeng dun po rin yung maging start of your journey to propose a research project. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dr. Villar. We have one last question. I just want to ask, what will happen if one of the key members of the research team drops out of the project? In some agencies, they allow job order personnel to participate in the research endeavors. And during the duration of the project, that member transfers to another agency. Oh, anyone would like to share something on that?
I think it depends how key the key member of the research team is. Because if it's a key member, as in one of the, let's say, co-PIs, mahirap yan. If it's someone like, if it's one of your full-time personnel, that has happened to me, that somebody had to resign, and then you just replace that person. If it's a co-PI, ano ba? Ano ba nangyayari? Dave, ano mo ba? Or Henry, alam mo ba?
That is very good if it's co-PI.
Kung co-PI, paano yun?
No are.
Hindi ako naka-experience kasi
wala akong ganun.
normally kasi if PI ka, may mga agreement yan na may mga agreement that you have to sign in, and you have to agree that within the span of time, you have to be attached to this agency hanggang matatapos yung project at the time that you are allowed. May mga ganun kami. May mga internal, meaning institutional mandate kami if we indulge or we involve into especially grants, big grants na ganon, especially for principal investigator. Parang there are additional provisions in our institution that we have to strictly follow, especially on the duration, no? And normally naman kasi pag mga principal PIs, they are kumbaga talagang tenured na in the institution, or yung mga bago siguro nasa mga project management level. May mga funding agencies, hindi naman pag mga team members naman kasi hindi siya strictly reported to the funding agencies, no? Meaning project management level lang yan, institutions na yan. But may mga funding agencies din talaga na nagsasabi na up to this certain level lang yung pwedeng i-declare to the agency. All the rest, hindi na pwede. I mean, to the institution level na, to the university level na. So, it really varies according to the funding agency. Yun nga, sabi ni Doc Didit na pag principal PI, parang malaking problema talaga. No, malaking problema. Malaking problema 'yan. Bakit at first during when you write your research proposal, bakit hindi mo nakuha yung commitment ng principal PI to really finish the project before transferring to, unless talaga na talaga malaki yung problema na kailangan niyang huminto from the institution. I never experienced na. Ang na-experience ko lang siguro is an entire project was I inherited a project na nag-retire. Pwedeng ganung konteksto. I inherited na project from a principal PI na nag-retire na, which is one of the provision dahil health reason, the principal PI has to do early retirement. no? And then luckily, isa sa mga provisions doon, the university can decide to transfer the project to anyone in the university. So yun nga lang, it's up to you whether ang hirap kasi pag sumalo ka lang ng project sa iyo lahat ang hirap mag-manage ng project na hindi ikaw yung nagsusulat during the research proposal. So may mga ganun.
Sir, pwedeng mag-share na experience. I actually have an experience na ako yung pinasok doon sa project. So hindi naman po PI yung principal yung role na pinalitan ko, pero coming into the project, what I learned from the project leader, may justification kasi it's a government funded project. So a justification was written to the funding agency, and ang alam ko po, they had to present or to justify that the expertise of the person I replaced is the same as my expertise. So yun po. Kasi for example, ang role namin was more of sa image analysis or digital image processing. So we had to parang ipinakita po na pareho kami ng expertise. So yun. Tapos dagdag ko na rin po dun sa mga key points kanina dun sa earlier question. Dun related dun sa funding agency, ibibida ko na rin po yung namin ni Ma'am Rachel Rojas. Kasi for example po sa ACM Women in Computing, nagbigay po kami ng, tama po ba Ma'am Rachel, 10,000 pesos for selected researchers. Tama po ba Ma'am? I think that's 10,000. May tatlo po yata tayo na pinili. So siguro po one important na rin advice, I guess, is to be members of professional organization. So it's related to the development of network, I guess. Yan, same with Sir Justin na yun nga, young researcher din. Doon din po ako nakakakuha. Katulad ako, I'm currently a regular member of NRCP. So doon din po may marami ring mga funds na available, and being members of this professional organizations, you're also encouraged to take advantage na may mga funds naman po na available. Ayun po. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Maan. I think networking, as mentioned earlier by Ma'am David, and also Sir Justin, is very important, as mentioned by Ma'am Maan. I became by volunteer. I volunteered to ACM. A few years ago, I said I want to organize a Philippine branch of the ACM Women in Computing, because we didn't have at the time an organization on that. And then nagpakilala lang ako anyway. Kung hindi nila i-approve, I wouldn't lose anything, right? So and then ever since that time, they support the celebrations of the ACM Women in Computing Philippine celebrations or event. So ganun yun nangyari. So we currently have a special interest group on women in computing under the Computing Society of the Philippines. So plugging ulit, mag-member po kayo ng CSP, no? So plugging na rin, recently the ACM Women in Computing organized a regional chapter, which is Asia Pacific region. So I've been able to attend, I think, three meetings of the Asia Pacific. And then in a recent meeting, biglang naging chair ako nung conference committee. So biglang ang nangyari, napaisip ako, teka, ano nangyari? Meron daw magkakaroon ng Asia Pacific celebration on April 2021, which is online. tapos ako yung naging chair. Teka muna, does it mean I have to organize? So there will be a Asia Pacific celebration. Tayo po ang host na Philippine host through the CSP, Special Interest Group on Women in Computing. Abangan nyo po, lalabas po kami ng announcement. So networking is very, very important. And then, dahil may funding na pinapadalas ang ACM every year, we were able to give funding, may yung as mentioned by Mama Ann, yung konti lang, mga 10,000, mga gano'n. And then Ma'am Didit had an event, right, yung parang programming. So yung teams that have women or girl members of the computing group, binigyan namin ng, so yung funding is very, very important. So external funding is a big help in advancing the research outputs of our faculty and our universities, and it helps the Philippines. So yun lang. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. A quick question here. Lifetime po ba ang membership na 800 sa CSP?
Lifetime? Yearly po. Yearly po ang membership ng CSP. So sa 800, marami pong benefits. May free journals and all that. So hindi pa po tinataas yan since ewan ko ilang taon na atang yan ang membership ng CSP. So yearly po ang 800.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. At this point, Sir Dave, you already shared your certificate earlier, but we'll be sending it to you eventually. But at this point, we would like to share our certificate of appreciation to Dr. Rodrigo. Computing Society of the Philippines, in cooperation with the Department of Computer Science of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, presents this certificate of appreciation to Maria Mercedes T. Rodrigo, PhD, for her invaluable knowledge and insights in the field of research as a guest speaker during the CSP online seminar workshop on research writing during this 28th day of November 2020. Again, ma'am, thank you very much for those insights.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And it's really nice seeing everybody again. I miss seeing you guys. Having our usual get together is really during the conference, and since there's no on-site conference this year, wala tayo nagkita. Yun yung reunion namin. Jeff, I have a question. Are the videos of the lectures going to be available online?
I think they are already, ma'am.
Okay.
So yes, ma'am. We will be sending the link if it's needed. So just some reminders. This afternoon we'll be having our last workshop. So the workshop participants who are here, a link has been sent to you. Please be in the Zoom meeting by 1 p.m. Also to the mentors, please, I have messaged to you. And again, thank you very much to Dr. Suarez, Dr. Marshall, Dr. Rodrigo. Thank you to all participants. Thank you to CSP for this event. And we will now hear some closing words from the President of the Computing Society of the Philippines, Dr. Rachel Rojas.
Wow, thank you, Joff. Very, very fulfilling 2 days of workshop, no? So first of all, of course, our speakers, thank you, Didit, Dave, and Yami gave her talk earlier. And our speaker last 2 weeks ago, no?
3 weeks, ma'am.
3 weeks. 3 weeks na pala, ano? Okay, so thank you very much. Very informative talks, no? I think it's helping our community get out of our respective boxes and comfort zones, no? So of course, thank you to our participants, no? We believe that this is a first of a series, no? So we hope that you will have your outputs later on. Of course, the organizers, Joff and his team of facilitators and mentors, thank you very much for for contributing to the success of this event, no. And to be able to help us evaluate the event, we would appreciate your inputs, no. Kindly go to the link provided for the evaluation. So once again, thank you on behalf of the Computing Society of the Philippines. Thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you in our part 2. Joe, may part 2 tayo. So thank you very much to everyone, and we wish you well in your part 2 workshop this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rojas. That ends our CSP online seminar on research writing. Again, from CSP, thank you all for attending. Have a blessed long weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Thank you, Dr. Dave.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Paul.
Dr. Henry, the members of the CSP board, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Ma'am Rachel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Joe.